As the Blanchett released seed arrows to kill them, Annie used her panda puppet to block the attack. Suddenly, the plant monsters started growing like crazy from the ground. Upon seeing this, 5-element P Sword Saint said, "What is supposed to come will still come, but this time the number is really exaggerated." Meanwhile, Leping smiled and asked Elizabeth, "Do you remember the first time I went on an adventure with you a few months ago?" Elizabeth asked, "What do you mean? Remember what happened?" As the Sword Saint and Annie were fighting with the plant monsters, Leping told Elizabeth, "If I were back then and saw the situation now, I would probably be frightened. But now, I feel that I have fully adapted and no longer need to pretend to be calm. Originally, I thought I should be safe if I took you with me on this trip. But considering the devil's moodiness, unexpected situations may still occur. So I specifically asked to bring Annie and Miss Zhizhai, and with the addition of 2 strong men, I would be able to calmly face everything I encounter on the journey." Elizabeth, with a puzzled expression, told Leping, "What's there to show off? In the past, I had to hide my identity and pretend to be weak in front of outsiders to study the outside world. But now, because of the agreement with this king, I will start to establish my own power, so I will show my identity and stop pretending to be weak." Meanwhile, the Sword Saint and little girl Annie were fighting the plant monsters and Blanchett. Leping told Elizabeth, "What a show! I'm just glad to know you, Elizabeth. It's so nice of you. I hope to be with you forever," thinking, "Fortunately, we have become friends instead of enemies. I hope we can live in peace together forever." Suddenly, a plant monster came from behind Leping and swallowed him in front of Elizabeth. Upon seeing this, both Annie and the Sword Saint were shocked. Elizabeth, however, remained calm, thinking, "Did Leping just confess his love to me?" The Sword Saint used her sword to cut and save Leping, but unfortunately, it was already too late. Leping had disappeared to nowhere. Upon seeing this, little girl Annie said, "Brother Leping was swallowed up and disappeared to nowhere." The Sword Saint remained calm and told little girl Annie, "We just have to catch Blanchett and interrogate her, and we'll know." However, Blanchett commanded all the plant monsters to self-destruct, saying, "Capture that man alive. The mission has been completed." The 5 elements P started glowing, creating a huge explosion. Blanchett, watching from the sidelines, thought, although the price of sacrificing 35 elements P is a bit high, compared to being entangled with the Swordmaster, this is obviously the most correct choice. But little girl Annie used her Guardian of the Muppets just in time to save herself and the Sword Saint. Annie told the Sword Saint, "In order to prevent this explosion, all my magic power has been exhausted, and Bear and Rabbit were also seriously damaged." The Sword Saint agreed, saying, "That's to be expected. Even if I'm a Demon King, I may not be able to completely defend against the self-destruction of the Demon King. I didn't expect your guardian magic to be so powerful, Annie." Blanchett noticed that the breath of life had disappeared, and only the Sword Saint and the girl were left. Realizing she had to use all the remaining seeds, she prepared them and planted them into the ground. As she did, the plant monsters started growing all around Annie and the Sword Saint. After fully growing, they initiated a 6-fold self-destruction, creating a massive explosion. However, the Sword Saint reacted in time and saved both herself and Annie. Just when she thought they were safe, a powerful move came out from the forest and attacked them. Blanchett knew it wasn't simple to defeat the president of the Sword Saint Guild, but thought it was enough to beat her into the forest, where more powerful beings than the 5 elements P awaited. She decided to retreat and recover first. However, before she could leave, Elizabeth appeared behind her, saying, "It seems that there are many things happening here that I don't know about. Come and explain them to me." Shocked, Blanchett wondered, "Wasn't she just killed by a bomb?" she asked Elizabeth. "Who are you?" Without wasting any time, Elizabeth started using her mind control skill to see who was behind all of this. Blanchett, scared, realized, "My intuition tells me that I must not fall into her hands. Otherwise, my end will be worse than death." To avoid that, she removed the armor on her right hand, revealing a hidden weapon, the arrow of self-killing. She used it and killed herself. Seeing this, Elizabeth thought, she made the right choice. If she had been caught by me, I would have given her a really painful death. She was curious, wondering, could it be that Twyla has also colluded with a dark guild? It has only been a mere 500 years, but neither one nor the other has put me in their eyes, right? Okay, then this time I will instill terror into you. Meanwhile, on the other side, the plant monster that had swallowed Leping came out of the middle of the forest and released him. Confused, Leping didn't know what was going on. But as he looked at the plant monster, he got a pretty uneasy feeling upon seeing its expressions. He stepped back, telling the plant monster not to come close. As the plant monster prepared to launch an attack on Leping, he shouted, "Elizabeth, save me!" However, the plant monster didn't attack him. Surprised, Leping wondered what happened. He saw the plant monster eating something on the ground. Leping wondered, what is it eating? When he checked his pocket, he realized, is it the organic fertilizer I brought here? This was the meeting gift I originally planned to give to the elf tribe. Leping asked the plant monster, "Do you like to eat this?" In response, the plant monster nodded like crazy. Leping told the plant monster, "I'll give it all to you if you promise not to eat me." He threw the organic fertilizer in front of the plant monster, who started eating it like crazy. After consuming all the organic fertilizer, the plant monster was fully satisfied and lay unconscious on the ground. Leping, upon seeing the plant monster unconscious, said, "Although fertilizers are good, excessive intake may cause nutritional imbalance. Fortunately, this is a plant-type monster." He then wondered what he should do next and where he should go in this huge forest. He hoped Elizabeth would find him soon, but decided, forget it, I'd better think of a way while walking. Meanwhile, Elrond reported to the Joker that when the man was halfway through the teleportation, his plant monster suddenly stopped. The Joker asked, "What's going on?" "Use the surveillance plant to detect his location." Elrond responded, "That guy has all his magic power hidden in his body, with no magic power response, and the surveillance plant cannot find his location." Upon hearing this, the Joker started laughing, saying, "The answer is indeed not that simple. It needs to be combined with further information interpretation. I can basically confirm the man's identity." He already knew about Leping's identity through various sources and memories, realizing that Leping is the legendary brave. The Joker thought, "Then I will use the card you created to defeat you and prove to that woman that I am no worse than you." Meanwhile, on the other side, the Sword Saint and little girl Annie both successfully made it out alive from the huge explosion. However, the Sword Saint was badly injured. She explained, "If I use the previous sword moves based on Leping's sword skills, a kind of magic power will be generated in your body, causing discomfort from the collision." Little girl Annie asked the Sword Saint if she was okay. The Sword Saint told Annie not to worry, she just needed to take a break to recover. However, Annie suddenly noticed a powerful magic approaching them. Without wasting any time, she commanded her puppets to block the attack. But her puppets, already badly injured, couldn't stop the powerful move and were destroyed. Surprised, Annie told the Sword Saint, "Bear and Rabbit have been completely destroyed. Is it elemental magic or those 5 element peas?" The Sword Saint replied, "This guy in front of me is much more dangerous than the 5 elements pea." Their opponent was a cartoon little mage, a 5-star demon lord. But suddenly, little Annie noticed something and asked the Sword Saint, "Have you also noticed it?" The Sword Saint replied, "Yes, this guy has the aura of a brave man, but he also has another evil power." The cartoon little mage started preparing his magic attack, but before he could complete it, the Sword Saint seized the opportunity and used the third style, swallow catching insects, to attack him. She was surprised to see her stick crack as the cartoon little mage remained perfectly fine, protected by Phalanx protection. Surprised, the Sword Saint wondered what it was, but before she could figure it out, Someone attacked her. Luckily, little girl Annie saved her life. However, Annie was also in a tough situation as she had used the red demon eye a bit too much today, wondering if she could control it again. The attacker was Cartoon Guard, also a Demon Lord Peak. The Sword Saint thanked Annie and told her to leave it to her, but the magic power collided in her body again. Whether she was using her own swordsmanship or the brave man's swordsmanship, she seemed to be out of tune. Annie asked the Sword Saint if she could still fight. Meanwhile, the cartoon little mage started preparing different types of element magic, combining them to create a powerful move. Surprised, little Annie wondered, it can actually fuse different elements together. This is a very bad move. Even if she activated the eyes of the red demon, it would be difficult for her in her current state to confront them head-on. It would be fine if the Swordmaster was not injured, she thought. No, Annie, what are you thinking about? When you encounter a strong enemy, you just want to rely on Master Swordmaster. You are the same as Master Swordmaster, both chosen by Brother Leping to maintain world peace. Brother Leping spent so much time training me so that I can contribute to the world peace plan. Neither I nor I can live up to the expectations of Brother Leping and Sister Elizabeth. I have to prove that I am a suitable candidate. As the cartoon little mage launched the powerful move, Elemental Bomb, towards the Sword Saint and Annie, it created a huge explosion. When the cartoon little mage thought they had won, he suddenly noticed something on the other side of the explosion. He was really surprised to see that little girl Annie had summoned a really big snake puppet, which blocked the elemental bomb without any problem. The snake puppet absorbed the elemental bomb. Annie, awakening her bloodline, warned them, "Feel free to come over here." The Sword Saint noticed that Annie's demon level had suddenly risen from the demon sect level to the peak of the Demon King and might even have surpassed her own current strength. She thought, is this the true strength of the Eye of the Red Demon? No wonder the brave lord and the Demon King chose Annie. Annie commanded her snake puppet to attack the enemy. The snake puppet started running toward the enemy to attack, but the cartoon guard used Phalanx protection to stop the snake puppet. However, the snake puppet avoided their attack. Annie realized that these magic cubes not only had super high-level defense, but also could tear the snake puppet into pieces if it got trapped. However, her Eye of the Red Demon allowed her to see the mark points generated before each release, enabling her to control the snake to avoid them in time. She used wind magic to distract them, and commanded her owl puppet to use Storm Slash. However, the cartoon guard used Phalanx protection to block Annie's attack. As they let their guard down, Annie used this opportunity to command her snake puppet to attack them. The snake puppet started to swallow them with their barrier. The Sword Saint told Annie, "That block can't be broken even by my brave hero's branch." She asked Annie, "What are you going to do?" Annie confidently replied, "It's really difficult to destroy that block at once, but if it is decomposed slowly, I can manage." The Sword Saint realized that Annie's strength still had a lot of room for growth, and that she needed to overcome her own limitations soon. Otherwise, the hero and the Devil's Throne would no longer belong to her. She questioned Annie, "Why is it okay to decompose slowly?" Annie replied, "The magic power swallowed and decomposed by the snake will be absorbed and transferred to my body. No matter how powerful his magic is, I can slowly consume it." She was slowly absorbing their magic power, but the bloodline awakening was about to invade her consciousness. She thought, "I must hold on until I succeed." But suddenly, someone killed her snake puppet, and she was badly injured. The Sword Saint was shocked and didn't know what had just happened. The attack was so fast that she couldn't react in time, and she was also struck by a powerful sword move. The attack was so powerful that it created a huge explosion in the forest, but luckily, the Sword Saint managed to shield herself just in time to save her life, though she was badly injured. She thought, "The first time was when I fell into the Demon King's ruins, and the second time was when the power of chaos broke out in my body, and I was rescued by the Demon King. And now it has appeared in my mind again. That feeling called despair. The one who attacked the Sword Saint and Annie was the cartoon general, a Samsung Demon King. He told the cartoon guard and cartoon little mage, "I will handle it." Meanwhile, Elizabeth was wandering in the forest, trying to find the real culprit. This is the location where the magic power is the strongest. Where is the black hand of the queen? She wondered. Suddenly, upon seeing Elizabeth, the enemy exclaimed, "The big fish has arrived." They prepared a barrier to trap her. Elizabeth, upon entering the magic barrier, realized she had walked back to the original place and thought, "This is a magic barrier, which means its strength is above the level of a demon king." She told them, "Do you want to trap me here? Little trick." Suddenly, a doll appeared in front of Elizabeth and captured her, starting to shrink her size. This doll was the cartoon Sealing Array, a 2-star demon king. After capturing Elizabeth, the doll told her, "The flow rate of time inside each level of the seal will be doubled, and the time of 10 levels of seals will be slowed down by 1024 times. No matter how powerful you are, you will always be locked in the cage of time." Meanwhile, Elizabeth stood like a statue inside the barrier. As she smiled, the barrier started cracking. Surprised, the cartoon Sealing Array wondered, why is she not affected at all? Elizabeth destroyed the barrier without any problem. As she emerged, she told the cartoon Sealing Array, "This king has lived in the time barrier for a year." Elizabeth told them they were just a trifle and ordered them to leave immediately. But suddenly, a scythe tore into Elizabeth's body, catching her by surprise. She wondered what had just happened. This was the work of number 7777, Cartoon Death, a 1-star demon king. He used his soul-snatching scythe to extract Elizabeth's soul from her body. This was his special skill. Once hit, the target's level could be ignored, and the soul could be directly extracted. He laughed as he pulled her soul out. However, Cartoon Death misjudged the situation. Elizabeth, even in her soul form, grabbed his neck, leaving him speechless. Furious, she demanded, "Who ordered you to do this? Tell me now, and perhaps I'll let you die quickly." For the first time, Cartoon Death felt the fear of death. He, the mighty Death who terrified everyone, couldn't believe he was now the one trembling in fear. He was so scared that he reverted to his original card form. The one who summoned Cartoon Death realized it was useless. Even soul extraction couldn't harm Elizabeth. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's soul returned to her body. After fighting the enemy, she realized something. "Even if you didn't tell me, I could have guessed it. This is clearly Leping's aura," she wondered. Could it be that this visit to the elf tribe was another one of his carefully planned games? Elizabeth grew even angrier as she thought, "It's one thing to test them, but to include me in this? You arrogant Leping, you'd better remember I am a chess player sitting at the table like you, not a chess piece on the board." Summoning her demonic hands, she tore apart the space-time where the enemies were hiding. She warned them, "If you know what's good for you, commit suicide quickly. Otherwise, if I get serious, you'll die a far more miserable death." However, the enemy laughed at Elizabeth, telling his partner, "Look at her, she talks so big." The other one reassured him, "Don't worry, let's see if she can get out." Elizabeth realized, this is Cartoon Maze, number 8888, another 1-star demon king. So, this is what has trapped me here. Whatever Leping created, even if it wasn't of high magical level, always had the special effect of enabling the weak to defeat the strong. Elizabeth used just a bit of her strength to knock on the structure of the cartoon maze, shattering it. She emerged from the maze, mocking her enemies, saying, "Two ignorant fools." The enemy was enraged by Elizabeth's arrogance. One of them, the cartoon queen, a 5-star demon king, declared to her partner, "It's enough for me to handle her." The cartoon king, a peak demon king, sitting on his throne, responded, "Then I'll leave it to you, queen. I look forward to your victory." Elizabeth confronted them, summoning her demonic hand and using it as a throne to sit on. She addressed the Cartoon King. "Calling yourself a king in front of me? You're not qualified yet." The Cartoon King, now furious, ordered his queen, "Kill this ignorant fool." The Cartoon Queen launched her cards, summoning a peak demon king, Cartoon Dagger. However, Elizabeth paid them no mind, telling them, "Shut up and go to hell." She launched an attack toward them, but the Cartoon Queen summoned a magic circle, swift wings, and easily destroyed Elizabeth's attack. The Queen counterattacked with her ace, Kill. Elizabeth effortlessly blocked the attack with just one finger, as if snapping a bug. She noticed, however, that the attack actually broke one of her nails. "Not bad," she remarked, praising the Cartoon Queen. As the Cartoon Queen prepared to attack Elizabeth again, suddenly, the ball monsters she had killed before started moving towards her, ready to attack. Surprised, the Cartoon Queen wondered how they were still alive. As they were about to strike, she swiftly cut them both in half. Thinking she was finally done, the ball monsters multiplied again and attacked her from behind. Shocked, the Cartoon Queen wondered what was happening. She used her Cartoon Dagger to slice them into pieces once more, but the ball monsters kept recovering and multiplying, relentlessly attacking her. Annoyed and frustrated, the Cartoon Queen wondered what kind of magic these bullets possessed. She continuously slaughtered them, but they kept multiplying and attacking. Finally, she used her ace, Critical Hit, to finish them off for good. However, the Cartoon Queen was shocked when she saw that her attack had no effect on the proliferation magic bullet. In fact, the number of magic bullets grew even more. Elizabeth mocked her, saying, "For someone like you, magic bullets are more than enough." She commanded the magic bullets to attack the Queen, and with their help, Elizabeth destroyed the Cartoon Queen's body and retrieved the Cartoon Dagger cards. She thought to herself, so many tricks, all designed for the weak to defeat the strong. Suddenly, something began to absorb Elizabeth's magic bullets. The Cartoon Queen, whose body had been torn apart by the magic bullets, was still alive. She summoned an incredibly powerful monster that devoured all of Elizabeth's magic bullets. This monster was number 9999, Cartoon Dinosaur, a 2-star demon king. Seeing this, Elizabeth realized that these were the Queen's last 2 cards, one for magic absorption and the other for resurrection. The Cartoon Queen then summoned number 6666, Cartoon Aquarius, a 1-star demon king, which quickly healed her. Furious, she shouted at Elizabeth, "You think you can kill me so easily? Prepare to suffer the consequences, you arrogant woman." However, the Cartoon Dinosaur began to struggle after absorbing so many magic bullets. The chaos within his body was too much for him to handle, and he could barely keep it together. Unable to hold it any longer, he launched the magic bullets back at Elizabeth. This was his special skill. Cartoon dinosaurs can re-emit absorbed magic skills at twice the original amount. But this was no big deal for Elizabeth. She effortlessly stopped the attack, leaving the Cartoon Dinosaur in shock. He couldn't believe she had stopped it so easily. The Cartoon Queen was equally surprised, wondering how this could be possible. Elizabeth explained, "As long as it's a move created by me, even if you magnify it 100 times, it won't harm me at all." She then began casting a spell, Severe Punishment, and crushed both the Cartoon Queen and Cartoon Dinosaur. The pressure was so intense that the Cartoon Dinosaur's body was torn into pieces. Seeing the power of her magic trick, Elizabeth felt truly satisfied. Although the inspiration for this magic trick came from that stupid dog, she thought, it has to be said that the effect is very impressive. The Cartoon Dinosaur returned to his card form, and there were many other cards, but Elizabeth noticed that there was no Queen card among them. As she wondered about this, the Cartoon Queen suddenly attacked her from behind. Elizabeth dodged the attack, but the Queen didn't stop there. She continued to launch attacks. Despite her efforts, none of them worked, and the Queen was shocked. By the time she realized what was happening, it was already too late. Elizabeth had split her body in two. Elizabeth transformed into her Demon Queen form and used a powerful slash technique, saying, "Stop nagging. I'll just be a little more serious." However, the Cartoon Queen used Aquarius, and her body began to regenerate. Seeing this, Elizabeth realized no action is required from the main body. As long as the main body is killed, resurrection magic will automatically activate, and the rebirth point can be selected within a certain range. The Cartoon Queen confidently told Elizabeth, "You can't kill me." But Elizabeth summoned her demonic hands and used absolute confinement to restrict the Queen's movement. Elizabeth smiled and said, "First, I'll limit your resurrection point within my restricted range, and then I'll play with you slowly." Elizabeth then used the punishment of dissolution and began tearing the Queen apart slowly. However, the Cartoon Queen healed herself with a drop of dew, saying, "It's no use. I only need a drop of dew from the bottle to revive." She mocked Elizabeth, explaining, "The magic space in the bottle is connected to the entire ocean, providing an endless amount of water. How long will your magic last?" But Elizabeth didn't care. She cast poisonous punishment, and the Cartoon Queen began crying out in pain. Elizabeth didn't stop there. She unleashed a series of punishments, including water punishment, skinning punishment, thousand needle punishment, tear punishment, and thunder punishment. The Cartoon Queen screamed in agony, but Elizabeth coldly told her, "The various injuries you receive in absolute confinement will continue to accumulate and stack. Let's see how long you can last." As Elizabeth continued her relentless assault, the bottle of Aquarius began to wither, unable to revive the Queen any longer. The Cartoon Queen died instantly. Elizabeth smiled and said, "When infinite resurrection turns into infinite pain, your spirit will naturally wither, and you will choose to give up." Now, only one opponent remained, the Cartoon King. The king angrily told Elizabeth, "I will personally deal with you." He stood up from his throne and summoned all the card diggers. Using his unique skill, polymerization, he began to combine them to create a powerful weapon. After successfully merging the cards, he created a powerful weapon called the Cartoon Lance, a 2-star demon god weapon. He then forcefully broke through his realm, becoming a 1-star demon god. Holding the Cartoon Lance, he laughed and said to Elizabeth, "You're a queen, and I'm a king, but there is only one seat for the strongest ruler in the world." Upon hearing this, Elizabeth started laughing. The Cartoon King, frustrated by her reaction, asked, "Why are you laughing?" Elizabeth replied, "Once upon a time, there was a demon king who was the top existence in this world. Looking at you now, an ant, I can see how I probably looked to him back then." The Cartoon King didn't understand what Elizabeth was saying. He grabbed his weapon and retorted, "You're still rambling despite the fact that you're about to die. You might not realize it, but my power is far beyond that of your previous opponents." He used his world-breaking martial art and charged at Elizabeth to attack her. But Elizabeth didn't stop there. She also used her world-breaking magic to counter his attack. However, her attack had no effect on the Cartoon King. He used his skill, King of Grand Slam, to strike Elizabeth, leaving her surprised and wondering what had just happened. Seizing the opportunity, the Cartoon King launched a powerful attack, seemingly killing Elizabeth. After landing the blow, he began laughing, declaring, "This king is the strongest in the world." But suddenly, he transformed back into his original card form. Elizabeth was still alive. The one the Cartoon King had killed was merely an illusion she had created. Angry, Elizabeth crushed the king's card, thinking, "Is this Leping's goal? Are you using these things to remind me that there is still a long way to go to reach the top? If I'm arrogant and proud, I'll repeat the same mistakes and become as foolish and ridiculous as these things." Elizabeth muttered to herself. She then told Li Ping, "Just wait, I'll definitely catch up to you." But suddenly, she noticed something odd. She thought all the cards had been destroyed, so why hadn't she left the space? Then she realized it was the Cartoon King's throne. The throne began to transform, and a moment later, it successfully turned into a duck. Its name was Cartoon Duck, and its magic level was unknown. The cartoon duck started saying something to Elizabeth in its own language. Annoyed, Elizabeth angrily shouted, "Are you trying to waste my time? Get lost!" She then used her demonic hand skill to kill it. However, she was shocked when another demonic hand blocked her attack. Surprised, she thought, "It has the ability to copy my skills. It can defend itself from me." The cartoon duck not only used Elizabeth's skills, but also transformed its appearance, becoming a duck version of Elizabeth. Upon seeing this, Elizabeth lost control and became furious, yelling, "How dare you!" Meanwhile, on the other side, Li Ping was wandering around a forest when he found an apple tree. He plucked some fresh apples from the tree, remarking, "This must be the elf tribe. There are so many different fruits here. Although the taste is nothing special, if I take them back and cultivate them, I could develop a better variety." However, he was so focused on picking apples that he paid no attention to his surroundings, unaware of the impending danger. An elf zombie was watching his every move from behind. The one controlling this zombie was Elder Elrond. He informed Joker, "One of the bodies has found the man's location." Joker asked, "What are you waiting for?" and ordered, "Get him back." Li Ping, still unaware of the impending danger, continued his search for ripe fruit. Elder Elrond began to approach, launching an attack. As the zombie struck, Li Ping noticed some riper fruit nearby and dodged the attack without even realizing it. The zombie's head hit the ground but quickly stood back up, its legs bending in a ghostly manner like something out of a 90s movie. It then started running toward Li Ping again. Suddenly, some of the fruit in Li Ping's hands fell to the ground. The zombie, rushing at full speed, couldn't stop in time and slipped on the fruit, crashing face first into the ground. The pain from the impact transferred to Elder Elrond, who was connected to the zombie. As Li Ping began picking up the fallen fruit, he spotted a magical plant capable of growing regardless of climate laws. Meanwhile, Elder Elrond stabilized his connection with the zombie and sent it charging toward Li Ping once more. Still focused on the magical plants and fruits, Li Ping thought, "If I take these back to the novice village, I should be able to cultivate them." Just as he was feeling pleased with his discovery, the zombie suddenly appeared right in front of him. Startled, Li Ping screamed loudly and threw all the fruit from his hands. His sudden reaction startled Elder Elrond as well, making him feel as though his heart had jumped out of his chest. Without wasting any time, Li Ping began running as fast as he could. Elder Elrond, now furious, thought, "This must be intentional." He then asked Joker, "Can I use 50 dark gears to activate all the other corpses? This legendary hero is not easy to deal with." Joker, also nervous after seeing Elder Elrond's reaction, replied, "Use them. Just bring him back to me quickly." Elder Elrond activated the 50 dark gears and began controlling all the corpses of the elf tribe people in the forest. Meanwhile, Li Ping, running faster than ever, was confused and thought, "Why are there zombies in the elf forest? I need to find Elizabeth and the others quickly." Suddenly, the elf forest started shaking. Li Ping stopped and wondered if it was an earthquake, but he soon realized it wasn't. Instead, a massive wave of something was coming toward him. As he turned to look, he saw countless green lights glowing in the forest. Terrified, he wondered, "What is this?" Upon a closer look, Li Ping realized that the glowing green lights were actually the eyes of zombies, and he was surrounded. Seeing that all directions were blocked, he took a deep breath to calm himself, reminding himself that he was a legendary hero. But then it hit him he didn't bring Alpha with him. As Li Ping frantically thought of a way to escape, the ground beneath him suddenly began to crack. Fearful, he wondered if there were zombies even underground. Meanwhile, Elder Elrond commanded the zombies to take Li Ping down. The zombies, receiving the order, rushed toward Li Ping from all sides. Just as it seemed hopeless, someone appeared and started killing the zombies, saving Li Ping's life. It was the same plant monster that had kidnapped Li Ping before, but after Li Ping gave him some of his homemade special fertilizer, the monster had become attached to him. Li Ping was shocked to see his unexpected savior. However, Elder Elrond was not pleased. No wonder the plant magic suddenly stopped working, he thought. It turns out the 5 Elements P was tamed. He then informed Master Joker. This hero may also be a plant magic master. The 5 Elements P began rapidly shooting in all directions, annihilating the zombies. Leping, now sitting on top of the 5 Elements P, encouraged it. You can do this. Kill all the zombies. The 5 Elements P continued to eliminate the zombies with incredible speed. But suddenly, Elder Elrond used elf corpses to channel plant magic control and restrict all of the P's movements. Surprised, Leping wondered why it had suddenly stopped. Elder Elrond, using the magic of other elder corpses, continued to restrict the 5 Elements P, thinking with a smile, there are several generations of clan leaders and elders among these corpses. No matter how strong you are, you can't match the power of the entire elf race when it comes to plant magic. Then, Elder Elrond used plant magic involution to shrink the 5 Elements P. As a result, the P became so small that Leping could carry it in his hand. Leping, bewildered, wondered, what just happened? The 5 Elements P was left in an awkward pose, unable to protect Leping anymore. Now that the 5 Elements P had been neutralized, Elder Elrond commanded all the zombies to capture Leping. A massive wave of zombies surged toward him like a tsunami. Leping, in shock, wondered, is this the end of my otherworldly journey? The zombies overwhelmed him, creating a dome-like structure around him. But suddenly, a sound of laughter echoed from inside the dome. The chainsaw that Leping had created before coming to the elf tribe suddenly activated on its own and began slaughtering zombies. The chainsaw's power was so immense that it even killed Elder Elrond, who was controlling the zombie corpses, cutting his body in half. Shocked, Joker wondered, what happened? My corpse command device should only transmit sensations at best, but even the full damage was transmitted. As Elder Elrond died, all the zombie corpses he was controlling began to fall. Leping, clueless about what had just occurred, remembered that he also had a chainsaw, but was still confused, wondering, how did it come out on its own? The chainsaw, somehow communicating with Leping in a way he couldn't see, reassured him, I won't let you get hurt. However, after cutting the zombies in half, Leping noticed that they still didn't die. Scared, he warned the zombies not to come any closer. To his horror, all the zombies Leping had previously killed began standing up and moving toward him again. Suddenly, one of the zombies leaped at Leping to attack him, but he quickly used his chainsaw to kill it. Now, Joker was controlling the zombies after Elder Elrond's death, and he could do so even without the device, using corpse magic. He realized, it's still the same, but through the magic channel, the damage is being transmitted back to the caster, and that strange weapon in his hand has the effect of causing true damage. An elf archer appeared and launched a barrage of magical arrows at Leping. Surprised by the sheer number of arrows coming towards him, Leping raised his chainsaw to defend himself. Leping Scrade shouted at the elf zombies, "Don't come over here." The arrows the elf zombies shot at him bounced back because of his overpowered outfit effect, which could rebound 100% of enemy damage. The rebounded arrows killed all the zombies. As the zombies died, the Joker, who was controlling them, felt pain in his hand. Frustrated, he thought, even the damage reflected by that passive skill turns into true damage? It looks like this legendary hero has mastered the use of magic. He healed his wounds and, with a grin, said, I have the advantage of this territory, and the magic power of the entire elf tribe's corpses at my disposal. I will find a way to defeat you. The Joker then used Corpse Surge to combine all the zombie corpses, creating a massive monster. Leping Scrade swung his chainsaw blindly, using his chopping wood plus technique, and cut the enormous zombie corpse monster in half. The attack was so powerful that it not only sliced through the monster, but also split the planet in half, sending debris into space. The Joker, shocked, wondered how his strongest corpse magic, of which he was so proud, was countered by Leping as if it were nothing. The true damage from Leping's attack was so intense that it cut the Joker's body in half, killing him with just one move before he even realized it. After the Joker was killed, the corpses he was controlling began to fall. Leping, who didn't realize he had already killed the zombie monster, started shouting again. "Zombies, don't come near me!" He grabbed his chainsaw and charged towards the remaining zombies. Terrified, the zombies, seeing Leping's determined look, got scared and started running away. Leping, without hesitation, began chasing after them. Meanwhile, on the other side, Elizabeth was battling Duck Elizabeth. Elizabeth unleashed her world-destroying magic. Earth recasting, however, Duck Elizabeth copied Elizabeth's spell and used it against her. The collision of these two powerful magics created a massive explosion. Elizabeth, now furious, shouted at Duck Elizabeth, "I'll grind you into powder as punishment for offending me." She then controlled her world-destroying magic and twisted it, capturing Duck Elizabeth in a metal ball-like prison. After securing her, Elizabeth said, "This is made by Leping, but just in case." She transformed into her demon form and used her world-destroying combat art, sever into all two, slicing through the prison ball. However, she suddenly noticed something that shocked her. Duck Elizabeth was still standing, seemingly unharmed, and said, "Know your place, Elizabeth." Frustrated, Elizabeth thought, "How is this possible? Ridiculous. It used my most precious skills to restrain me." Time Seal, Soul Attack, Magic Attack, Infinite Resurrection, and now this perfect replica, all used by such a low-level summon. But then she remembered what Leping had told her. The level of the magic doesn't determine everything. By mastering the principles, a lot can be achieved with little effort, and even the weak can defeat the strong. Reflecting on Leping's words, she realized that he had prepared so much for her. Is this trip to the elf tribe meant to help me see the truth? Determined to win, Elizabeth used her final trick to decide the battle. However, Duck Elizabeth, too, used her perfect replica to replicate Elizabeth's move. Both Elizabeth and Duck Elizabeth pointed their fingers at each other, casting the most powerful technique, Demon Queen's swordless art. Meanwhile, Leping, who was terrified and chasing after zombies with his chainsaw, accidentally sliced through the space where Elizabeth and Duck Elizabeth were fighting. Elizabeth noticed Leping, and the distraction allowed Duck Elizabeth to successfully land a strike on her. Elizabeth, after being hit, landed on the ground and asked Leping what he was doing there. Upon hearing Elizabeth's voice, Leping opened his eyes and saw Elizabeth in front of him. But before he could say anything, his foot collided with a stone, causing him to fall on top of Elizabeth's chest. His face ended up wedged between Elizabeth's large, bouncy breasts. The chainsaw he was carrying slipped from his hands and fell away. The chainsaw's spirit, panicked, called out to Leping, "Don't abandon me." The spirit was really nervous upon seeing Leping and Elizabeth together and started spinning wildly. But then she remembered that Leping's backpack had space magic, so she didn't have to worry she could return on her own. "I won't leave you again, Dad," she said, before glancing at Elizabeth. Elizabeth glanced back at the chainsaw spirit, but then grabbed Leping tightly to provoke the chainsaw spirit. The chainsaw spirit returned to the magic backpack, and Leping quickly freed himself from Elizabeth's embrace. That was a close call. It almost ended badly there. "Luckily, I found you in time, Elizabeth," Leping said, breathing a sigh of relief. Elizabeth, confused, wondered what he meant by "almost ended badly," but then she realized, does he mean? The Demon Queen's swordless art that she had just used was also copied by that thing. But if she thought about it carefully, the copies were all reflections, so the art is reversed when it comes to time and space. If I hadn't been distracted just now, the result would have been annihilation. He knew I couldn't hurt him, but he stopped the attack by distracting me just now in order to save me. Leping apologized to Elizabeth, saying, "Because of me, we ended up in such a risky situation. I won't do that again." In Elizabeth's point of view, she saw a strong resolve in him. But in Leping's point of view, he was scared and crying, thinking, I said before that I was fully prepared for any dangers during this trip. But without you, it would be very hard to even take one step. I won't dare leave you again. Elizabeth pulled him towards her and said, What do you mean? I don't need you to show me mercy. Any other trials you have, just bring them on. Leping, blushing, stammered, Trials? Elizabeth, what are you talking about? His mind raced. Aren't we a bit too close? Meanwhile, Elizabeth was deep in thought. On one hand, you train me and make me worthy of being your partner. On the other hand, you care about my dignity. She then told Leping, You don't need to beat around the bush. I know exactly what you're thinking. Both of them blushed as they grabbed each other, leaning in for a kiss. But just as their lips were about to meet, someone interrupted them. It was Duck Elizabeth, who, in her own language, demanded, What the fuck are you doing in front of me? Leping, shocked, asked Elizabeth, What is that thing? Duck Elizabeth? But he quickly shut his mouth, realizing it might be better not to comment further. This time, Leping was lucky Elizabeth didn't beat him for the slip. Instead, she told him, Now that you're here, I have no intention of continuing. She then asked Leping to pack his things. Confused, Leping asked, What do you mean by my stuff? But Elizabeth pushed him toward Duck Elizabeth. Still baffled and not knowing what was happening, Leping found himself face to face with Duck Elizabeth. Nervously, he said, Hello, Duck Elizabeth. Upon seeing Leping, Duck Elizabeth used her perfect copy skill and started to replicate Leping. Seeing this bizarre transformation, Leping grew terrified and shouted loudly, Elizabeth, look. However, Duck Elizabeth struggled to copy Leping, as he was the one who created her. Elizabeth observed and remarked, This king saw it. But she was deeply suppressing her thoughts. Resolutely giving up my strongest form and directly copying you indirectly shows that I am not as good as you. Well, I admit this. But I will see how you can crack this special skill of overthrowing the powerful and defeating a self that is as powerful as you. Scared, Leping asked Elizabeth, Did you see? But Duck Elizabeth couldn't replicate Leping's body and skills. Elizabeth was genuinely surprised by this. The copy duck, after forcefully trying to create a replica of Leping, couldn't handle his power and exploded, returning to her card form. As the cards flew back to Leping, they changed color from dark to golden. Surprised, Leping wondered aloud, Isn't this the playing card I gave to Uncle Boss? What just happened? He then asked Elizabeth if she knew anything about these events. But in Elizabeth's point of view, she saw Leping saying something deeper. Do you see clearly? In the face of absolute strength, these so-called special methods of the lower class overthrowing the upper class will naturally fail. Do you understand? The solution is to make your own strength so strong that it cannot be copied, Leping declared. Elizabeth, disappointed and angry, thought to herself, I am already a 7-star demon god, but I still cannot compare to him. But Leping reassured her, saying, There's still a long way to go, right? Elizabeth agreed, saying, Of course I know. You want to pursue me, but you're afraid I can't handle it. You want to help me grow stronger, but you're worried about hurting my self-esteem. You act so nonchalant and carefree all the time, and I thought I had seen through you. But every time you get serious, I feel like you have me in the palm of your hand, and it makes me feel ridiculous. Leping then suggested, Elizabeth, use your teleportation magic to take us all to the sacred tree. Elizabeth agreed and used her force transmission magic to teleport them to the sacred tree. Meanwhile, on the other side, a fierce battle raged as the little girl Annie and the Sword Saint fought valiantly with everything they had, facing off against the enemy with all their might and bravery. Unfortunately, the battle was so intense that both of them lost their lives in the end, but not before defeating their foe. Just as their bodies lay lifeless, a golden light emerged, gathering their remains. It was Annie's doll, Raphael, given to her by Leping. Raphael used the resurrection of the dead magic, bringing both Annie and the Sword Saint back to life. As they began to heal, Elizabeth's teleportation magic circle appeared above them. Seeing the teleportation circle, Raphael said, "Now that the master and his men are here, I should retire, having accomplished my mission." Moments later, everyone was teleported in front of the sacred tree. Leping looked around and saw the unconscious bodies of little girl Annie and the Sword Saint. He asked Elizabeth, "What happened to them?" Elizabeth replied, "Don't worry about them. First, I want to find out who is behind all this." She used her demonic hand to grab the sacred tree and pulled it out from the ground. Leping was astonished, thinking, "Who is behind this? The tree that Elizabeth pulled out is so disgusting." The sacred tree, once uprooted, appeared grotesque, like a massive cage. Its roots were buried deep in the ground, and it was so enormous that both Elizabeth and Leping seemed very small in comparison. Seeing everything, Elizabeth remarked, "It seems that great changes have taken place among the elves over these 500 years. Suddenly, Leping noticed Bors and Elfie, who were imprisoned within the sacred tree. Shocked, he wondered what was going on. As he rushed toward the sacred tree to save them, the tree suddenly attacked Leping. Fortunately, he managed to dodge it, but the sacred tree didn't waste any time and attacked again. Scared and unsure of what to do, Leping closed his eyes, hoping that Elizabeth would save him. However, the sacred tree wasn't aiming to attack Leping, it was targeting Elizabeth, trying to kill her. But it was no match for her. Elizabeth glared at the sacred tree with angry eyes, and in the next moment, the tree was utterly destroyed. Just when it seemed all was settled, something unexpected happened. The Joker, who was thought to be dead, was still alive. He had merged his upper body with the remains of the sacred tree. Laughing, he said, "Destroying all the plant defenses of the elf tribe, subduing the scattered cartoon summons, and finally completely cutting off my corpse magic. All my plans were ruined by you one by one. It's really embarrassing, but at least we finally meet." Leping, terrified, hid behind Elizabeth and asked her, "Could this guy be an elf?" The Joker laughed and replied, "I didn't expect that the first person to find Elizabeth would be the one who hates her the most." He was delighted to see Elizabeth again, laughing maniacally and expressing his desire to kill her. Seeing this, Leping asked Elizabeth, "You two know each other?" Elizabeth replied, "I don't know him. I have no impression of him at all." The Joker, grinning, said, "Of course not, because I put on this clown costume to erase the existence of myself." He then removed his Joker hat and wiped off the makeup. "Do you recognize me now?" he asked Elizabeth. Meanwhile, in the Dark Demon Guild, Malfoy was attempting to create a clone of Elizabeth. He demanded that Number 24 provide his energy to assist in rescuing Elizabeth. Number 24 unleashed his 100,000 volts of electricity. The current was so strong that Malfoy started screaming in pain as the energy coursed through him. Malfoy successfully created a clone with the assistance of Number 24. Curious, Number 24 asked, "Is this one also going to the insect room?" Malfoy shook his head. "No, this sample is different. I need to work on it personally for a while to perfect it." Suddenly, the cloning pod opened, and a mass of flesh emerged, beginning to transform. Watching intently, Number 24 questioned, "Isn't this just another clone? What makes it different?" Malfoy responded with a grin, "Because this time, I separated part of my own essence and infused it into the clone. In some ways, he is me." The clone continued its transformation, eventually taking the shape of a younger version of Malfoy. A short time later, the older Malfoy began testing his clone's abilities. Number 24 addressed the clones, "If you win, you'll leave the insect room and be free. Let the battle begin." With that, the monstrous Malfoy lunged forward, snaking his distorted limbs towards the younger version of Malfoy. However, the young Malfoy swiftly dodged the attack and cast a spell of corpse magic, transforming his arm into a monstrous limb to counterattack. But the monster Malfoy stretched his grotesque hands and squeezed the young Malfoy like a mosquito. Number 24 remarked, "Has it already won? as expected from the strongest clone, the one who has won 10 consecutive insect battles. But Malfoy, watching closely, said calmly, "Only the survival of the fittest will reveal the strongest. It's not over yet." Suddenly, something unusual began to happen to the young Malfoy's body. The monster Malfoy, confused, realized he couldn't move. Has he taken control of my corpse cells? He wondered. In the next moment, the young Malfoy unleashed a surge of corpse magic, tearing through the monster Malfoy's limbs, ultimately killing him. Old Malfoy nodded approvingly. Good, he's mastered it completely. After eliminating the monster Malfoy, the young Malfoy retracted his corpse magic and approached the older Malfoy, kneeling before him. The older Malfoy looked down at him and said, "Now that you've inherited my corpse magic, I'll teach you how to harness technology and control the dark gears. Soon, you'll become the perfect clone and master all my abilities. You'll lead the invasion of the elf tribe and investigate for me." Number 24, standing nearby, suggested, "Why not create more of these perfect clones to invade other places as well?" Malfoy, however, shook his head. "The only flaw of the perfect clone is that it can't be mass-produced. If I divide myself too much, I'll no longer be me. But you're different. The nature I've given you is the humbleness I once despised the most," old Malfoy said. "Only with you here can I become the perfect me. Now, I have no more doubts. I no longer feel unworthy of master." But when the young Malfoy laid eyes on the clone of Elizabeth inside the cloning pod, a surge of rage overtook him. His eyes burned red with fury as he prepared to strike, intent on killing the Elizabeth clone. Sensing his violent intent, Number 24 warned him, "Be careful, there's an electric current charging within his body." Ignoring the warning, young Malfoy leapt into the air, unleashing his corpse magic, aiming to destroy the clone. However, old Malfoy intervened, his voice cold and commanding, "Know your place." At those words, the young Malfoy's body seized up, paralyzed, and he crashed to the ground. Old Malfoy looked down at him and said, "I understand the humbleness within you, born from never receiving love, and I see your strong hatred. But you must remember your purpose." Struggling on the ground, young Malfoy asked, "What do you mean, my purpose?" Old Malfoy responded sharply, "You are nothing more than a tool that exists to help me achieve what I desire." In the present, the young Malfoy stood before Elizabeth and said with conviction, "After decades of lurking, I've finally figured it out. My purpose of living. I'm not a tool, I am me. I hold my own power. One day, I'll replace the original and kill you, then live as I choose." Upon hearing his declaration, Lupin turned to Elizabeth and asked nervously, "Did you offend someone in the past and forget about it?" Elizabeth, unfazed, replied, "Maybe. I don't recall." Lupin's fear deepened. It makes sense, he thought. Elizabeth must have made countless enemies while becoming the ruler of the world. And now, while I'm under her protection, does that make me a target for revenge as well? It seems hiding my identity is crucial. Elizabeth, noticing the worry on Lupin's face, spoke calmly. "So, the elf tribe has fallen to this state. Are you not concerned that the plan to sow will fail?" She paused, reflecting. "It seems there are no longer any promising candidates in the elf tribe who could be developed to aid you in the future." Lupin awkwardly said to Elizabeth, "How can I focus on such trivial matters right now?" He thought to himself, "If you want to sow, go do it in the fields at home. Let's deal with that later." However, he advised Elizabeth, "It's better if you resolve this. After all, isn't that why you're here?" Elizabeth's eyes flashed with anger. Did he expect me to clean up the mess from the start? Does he think he knows everything about the outside world? She thought. Lupin, sensing her frustration, added, "I mean, Elif and Uncle Boss are still captives. Maybe it'd be better if you took the lead and communicated with them first. There could be a misunderstanding from the past, right?" Elizabeth snapped back. "A misunderstanding? I don't even recall him at all. How can we be sure he hasn't mistaken me for someone else?" Watching their escalating argument, Malfoy grew impatient. His voice boomed. Enough. Stop rambling. Were you even listening to me? I am Wes Malfoy, remember. Elizabeth, unbothered, raised an eyebrow. Oh, so you're with the Dark Guild. Leping, equally surprised, exclaimed, The Dark Guild? Malfoy's anger flared. It doesn't matter, whether it's you or my other self. I don't need to prove anything to either of you. You're both going to die. Even though the hero severed my corpse magic, I still wield the power of the elves and the dark gears. With that, Malfoy unleashed his attack, summoning the Sacred Tree's whip to strike. Elizabeth's eyes sharpened with resolve as she said, If you really are him, then it's time for me to step in. She summoned her demonic hand, piercing through the Sacred Tree's whip, and effortlessly captured Malfoy. Leping, worried, called out, Elizabeth, just make sure you don't hurt Uncle Boss and Elif. Elizabeth, maintaining her firm grip on Malfoy, reassured him, Don't worry, I won't harm your chess pieces. She swiftly extracted Uncle Boss and Elif, ensuring their safety. Malfoy, now completely immobilized by Elizabeth's overwhelming strength, struggled to break free. Elizabeth tightened her grip, her voice sharp. Why are you here, and where's Emilia? I've heard rumors about you reviving her. What's going on? The young Malfoy, his expression twisted, replied, Because of my respect and fear for you, I've also developed love and humbleness. Those complex emotions, combined with my distorted feelings, have created this well of negative energy within me. I was created as a tool to pursue you, but if I bring your body to him, would that finally break him? Elizabeth's eyes narrowed, her patience wearing thin. She squeezed harder, causing Malfoy to scream in agony. Enough of this nonsense, she growled. Don't make me ask you twice. Despite his pain, Malfoy grinned, his voice trembling. I finally understand. What's so great about you? Nothing. In fact, I only have deep hatred for you. As long as you exist, I will never find my true purpose. So, no matter the cost. With those words, Malfoy pulled a card from his mouth and summoned a monstrous entity, its form towering above them. Stunned, Elizabeth realized that the aura emanating from the being in front of her was from the demon god realm. The last card Malfoy had been hiding was none other than the Joker card, a supreme clown king and a 3-star demon god. The entity introduced himself as King Bomb. King Bomb turned to Malfoy and asked, Have you made up your mind? Let me torture your soul for 100 years, and in return, I will grant you one wish. Malfoy, uncaring of what would happen to him, replied coldly, Do whatever you want with my soul, but kill both of them in front of me. The Joker King grinned malevolently. A simple request. Consider it done. Elizabeth stepped forward, her expression sharp. You are also the ruler of a world, yet you bow to the whims of lesser beings. How pathetic. Although she knew she had an advantage in terms of magic, Elizabeth thought, I should start with defensive magic, just in case he has any special abilities. The Joker King laughed, his voice filled with cruel amusement. Rules are rules. I've been waiting for an opportunity to test my skills on you for so long. Why not take advantage of this perfect deal? We are both masters of dark magic, after all. Let's see who is truly superior. Without hesitation, Elizabeth cast a powerful spell, Forbidden Time Zone, which restricted her enemy's movements. However, to her shock, the Joker King countered by summoning his ace flying knives, launching them directly toward her. Elizabeth's eyes widened as she realized the Forbidden Time Zone isn't working on him. The Joker King smirked. Do you understand now? Magic and levels are merely for show. True power lies in the rules we follow, and mine are above yours. Upon hearing this, Elizabeth understood. So, these special abilities are based on rules. His superiority comes from the rules that govern his power, not just his magical strength. Thinking quickly, she called out, Leping! Leping turned toward Elizabeth, surprised. Did you call for me? The Joker King's eyes bulged, his jaw dropping open in disbelief. His entire demeanor changed as he gazed upon Leping, recognizing him instantly his creator. The ace flying knives, launched by the Joker King, hurtled toward Leping and Elizabeth. In a flash, the Joker King moved, positioning himself in front of them, blocking the knives with his own body. Blood dripped from his mouth and eyes, yet there was a look of satisfaction on his face. He had made it in time. Elizabeth's forbidden time zone spell faded away. However, Malfoy, watching the scene unfold, did not look pleased. What just happened? He thought angrily. The Joker King approached Malfoy with fury in his voice. Damn it, you almost tricked me. Malfoy, bewildered, snapped back. What's wrong? Are you scared when you see Elizabeth? Kill them now. Our contract is complete. Without hesitation, the Joker King unleashed a beam of light from his mouth, incinerating Malfoy's body in an instant. A broken soul like yours is worth only a few dollars, he growled. And you wanted me to kill my own creator? After disposing of Malfoy, the Joker King turned to Leping and Elizabeth, his demeanor suddenly shifting to that of a loyal servant. The Black Magician merely wanted to stir up trouble. I agreed to tag along for some fun, he said humbly. Elizabeth, unimpressed, asked, Do you still wish to continue this fight? Leping, still confused, wondered aloud, Did that person just turn to ash? And who exactly are you talking to? Elizabeth, slightly taken aback, thought to herself, this one was malevolent to begin with. Not only did the magic fail to corrupt him, but it amplified Wes Malfoy's negative emotions instead. The Joker King, bowing respectfully, said, I have no intention of fighting you, Elizabeth. I didn't expect that after all this time, you and the Creator would be on such good terms. Please tell Master that I will never dare to misbehave again. I'll take my leave now. With those words, he vanished, returning to his card form. Leping, watching this unfold, muttered, Are those the playing cards I gave to Uncle Perce again? Elizabeth, turning to him, said, You underestimate the potential harm ordinary objects can cause in the hands of the wrong people. If these cards fall into malicious hands, the consequences could be dire. Leping, still puzzled, asked, What does this have to do with my poker cards? They were fine when Uncle Perce had them. His thoughts raced. It's like this every time. The magic world is so deep and complex. Without magic, I can't see or understand what's really happening. Elizabeth gave a faint smile. Let's say your right poker cards are just an introduction. The user, however, is key. Those with ill intentions will only bring about their own downfall. But when used with good intentions, one can unlock the power of the 13 sacred warriors. Otherwise, they will succumb to dark magic. Her attention shifted, noticing the elder's body. Twyla is dead, she thought. In just 500 years, the elven tribe has fallen to this state. I'd better find out what happened here. With a wave of her hand, she brought Elif and Perce back to their feet. Their eyes were hollow, like soulless husks, their life force drained. Elizabeth commanded them, Tell me everything that happened here. They tried to respond, their voices trembling, but they could barely speak. Seeing their struggle, Leping stepped forward and said, Wait a moment. He raised his voice, calling out, Uncle Perce and the others have been tortured by the bad guys. Let me give them some water first. Leping took a water bottle from his bag and poured it on them. As they drank, their bodies began to heal instantly. Leping, surprised, thought, They're recovering. Fortunately, they have a foundation in magic. Miss Gigi had the same experience last time she recovered after just drinking some water. I'm so envious of her. Immediately after their recovery, both Elif and Perce knelt before Leping, saying, We deserve death for alarming the Demon Queen and Mr. Leping. If you wish to punish someone, punish me. It was my overconfidence that led to this disaster. I am willing to take full responsibility, Perce added with remorse. Leping waved them off and said, Don't worry. Just get up and tell me what happened here. Burse, still visibly shaken, replied, "The elf tribe has been corrupted by the Dark Guild. I fell for their tricks, which led to Mr. Leping's noble phantasm card falling into their hands. We were captured, our magic was drained, and then, I can't remember what happened after that." He continued, "The clown sacrificed countless lives to corrupt the treasure card. After that, I lost my mind." Elizabeth observed them closely and remarked, "Your condition is likely an after-effect of having your memories stolen." Leping, concerned, asked Elizabeth, "What should we do now?" Elizabeth responded calmly, "Don't worry. I'll use the same method to plunder those memories back." She then cast forced memory extraction on both of them. As their memories were forcefully extracted, their bodies once again became drained, and they collapsed to the ground. Panicked, Leping shouted, "Elizabeth, why did you drain them again?" Unfazed, Elizabeth absorbed their memories. Leping asked anxiously, "Did you find anything new?" Elizabeth shook her head, replying, "No. What they said earlier is basically all they know." However, her curiosity piqued, and she added, "The entire elf tribe is on the verge of collapse. Where can we get more information now? Twyla sacrificed herself for her people. She didn't betray my will. But the leadership of the elf tribe is getting weaker." Suddenly, an elf emerged from the ground and spoke. "I can tell you what happened here." Both Elizabeth and Leping turned to see the figure. Leping immediately recognized her. "Isn't that the one who attacked us before?" The elf stepped forward, revealing herself. "I am Blanchett," she said, "Demon Queen Elizabeth and the legendary hero. After you killed Ves Malfoy's clone, I was freed from his control." Leping approached excitedly. "That's great." But Elizabeth stopped him, her eyes narrowing. "Why should I believe you?" To prove her sincerity, Blanchett removed her eye patch, revealing a dark gear embedded in her right eye. She then pulled the gear out with her hand and handed it to Elizabeth. Leping was horrified as he watched Blanchett dig the dark gear out of her eye. Elizabeth, studying the gear, remarked, "Aren't these the gears of the Dark Guild, infused with evil magic?" Blanchett nodded. "I've removed the gear, so you can trust me now, right?" But Elizabeth wasn't convinced. "I'll believe it when I see it with my own eyes." Without hesitation, Elizabeth used forced memory extraction on Blanchett, pulling her memories to the surface. Blanchett's body drained of energy, and she collapsed to the ground. Leping, alarmed, hurried to get the water bottle to help her, but Elizabeth stopped him, grabbing his arm. "This time, you're going to watch it with me," she said firmly. As they peered into Blanchett's memories, they saw the truth. After Malfoy had taken control of the elf tribe, he fused his dark power with the World Tree, causing it to grow ugly, corrupted fruits. He ordered the tribe's elders to distribute the fruits to all members of the tribe. Anyone who ate the fruit became one of Malfoy's puppets. When Blanchett discovered this, she tried to destroy the World Tree, but she was caught by Malfoy. He gouged out her right eye and implanted a dark gear in its place, taking complete control over her. From then on, Blanchett became Malfoy's puppet, selecting high-quality elves to be sacrificed to the Dark Guild. The tribe's elders, already Malfoy's puppets, aided in the plan. Everything Blanchett did the attack on Elizabeth and others was due to the dark gear controlling her. When Elizabeth had killed her during their fight, Blanchett was merely following orders. After Elizabeth left, a 5-star demon lord, known as the Cartoon Shooter, appeared and shot a healing arrow into Blanchett's body, reviving her wounds. That was how she survived. After the memory vision ended, the group slowly gathered, and Leping handed out food to help them recover their energy. Elizabeth, still furious, cursed under her breath. "Damn it, unforgivable. I told you that the sucking konjac was prepared for me, but you gave it to someone else." Leping smiled, trying to calm her. "Don't be angry. I'll make it for you again when we get home. Let's focus on replenishing our energy first." Elif, bright-eyed, said, Dad, after eating this, my magic level will increase again, right? Burse nodded proudly. Of course, this is Mr. Leping's recipe. It's powerful. As they ate, Burse noticed a familiar figure and gasped. Master Sword Saint, what are you doing here? The Sword Saint, now humble, replied, I'm no longer the Sword Saint. I serve the brave man and the Demon King now, so please don't call me by that title anymore. Besides, I'm starving. No matter how much I eat, it feels like my body is still hollowed out. It's the cartoon elf who healed Blanchett's wounds. She originally wanted to secretly rescue the father and daughter, but now it's no longer necessary. They can speak face to face. With that, Blanchett handed over a deck of cards to Elif. Upon seeing them, Elif's eyes widened. This is 4 bombs, Holy Archer. What do you mean by face-to-face chat? As she spoke, suddenly, an elf spirit materialized in front of them. Both Burse and Elif were shocked, their eyes wide with disbelief. In the previous episode, Blanchett entrusted Elif with a card that had saved her life. When Elif channeled her spiritual power into the card, both she and Boz were taken aback by the result. As they opened their eyes, they found themselves in a place enveloped by clouds, where a woman stood before them. Turning to face them, she offered a gentle smile and said, We've finally met again. Boss's voice trembled as he recognized the woman. Is that you, Nikita? He asked in disbelief. Without hesitation, both Elif and Bruce rushed toward her. Bruce embraced her tightly, exclaiming, Is this real? I've missed you so much. Nikita returned his embrace, her voice tender as she replied, I've missed you too. With a glimmer of joy in his eyes, Boss called out to Elif, Come, let your mother see you. Elif stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. Mother, she stammered, weren't you sacrificed as nourishment for the world tree? Nikita nodded, her expression somber. In the physical world, my body is indeed gone, she explained. However, my soul has found rebirth here, in the holy temple. Moved by the reunion, tears filled Boss's eyes as he watched his family come together once more. Nikita gazed at Elif, astonished at how much she had grown, and apologized softly. I'm sorry I wasn't there to watch you grow up. Elif broke down, overwhelmed by the moment. Don't worry too much, Nikita comforted her daughter. There is so much I need to share with you. She paused briefly, realizing that time was slipping away and that the story was too complex to recount in full. Taking a deep breath, she began. Let me start from the beginning. Nikita turned to Boss. My father compelled me to return to the elf tribe, she explained, and to ensure your safety, I chose to devote myself to the sacred tree. Suddenly, I found my soul transported to a chaotic battlefield, where countless spirits from different worlds were gathered. It was revealed that an evil clown deity had summoned us, forcing our souls into a grim contest for his own amusement. We formed an alliance to resist his cruel games. Elif, despite her embarrassment, felt a sense of happiness and asked Boss, Was Mother always this spirited? Boss's face reddened slightly as he replied, Yes, she was always so full of life. Continuing, Nikita recounted, The evil clown unleashed his shadow army against us, but we fought back. His tactics were devious. He sought to corrupt our ranks through temptation. Those who succumbed were transformed into his twisted cartoon soldiers. In the end, only 13 of us had the willpower to resist his dark influence. Despite our resolve, we were hopelessly outmatched. During the final battle, I came perilously close to being obliterated by the clown. Her voice faltered momentarily before she resumed. Then, with a sudden, earth-shaking rupture, the Creator intervened, tearing the chaotic space apart. Not only did he bestow upon us sacred powers, but he also shattered the clown's shadow, significantly diminishing his strength. Henceforth, we, the 13 holy warriors, remain vigilant, tasked with guarding the balance and ensuring the clown's power remains in check. Suddenly, Nikita noticed Elif and Boss laughing and talking, catching her by surprise. What are you two laughing at? She asked. Did you even hear what I said? Time's running out. Boss pulled both of them into a hug and reassured Nikita, It doesn't matter what happened before. Since our time is limited, Let's cherish the moments we have left as a family, Nikita and Elif. He then added, and, Nikita, the creator, it's Sir Leping. It's thanks to him that all of this is possible and we're reunited. Nikita, with a look of relief said, so, you already knew, boss. I feel at ease now. As long as you continue to serve the creator, we will meet again. I truly wish I could stay with you forever, but the creator has given me a sacred mission, and I must fulfill it. As she spoke, her spirit began to fade away. Seeing this, Elif's voice quivered as she asked, are you leaving, mother? Nikita reassured them with a gentle smile. No, I am not leaving. I will continue to protect you through the card. Both Boss and Elif cried out, asking how they could ever see her again. Before vanishing completely, Nikita left them with a final message. Remember this, believe in peace, and you shall live eternally. With that, she returned to her form as one of the Holy Protector cards. As Elif and Boss returned to reality, their eyes were filled with tears. Seeing this, Elizabeth remarked, so her soul can traverse dimensions, even if only for a moment. Confused, Leping asked, Elizabeth, what do you mean? What just happened? It's happening again. I can't perceive the magic. Meanwhile, Boss turned to Elif and said with determination, from now on, we must be the most loyal servants of Sir Leping. On the other side, Elizabeth pondered aloud, cultivating power across different dimensions, imprisoning souls within artifacts, and summoning them at will. How did he come up with such a method? Leping, still clueless, asked, what are you talking about, Elizabeth? I don't understand. Nearby, the Sword Saint observed the scene and remarked to Annie, everyone consumed the same konjac jelly, so why do the father and daughter have significantly more magical power? Annie replied, it must be a special reward given to them. After all, they began fighting against the Dark Guild before anyone else. The Sword Saint considered this and thought, a reward? Although I'm still the strongest for now, they might soon catch up to me, and I performed poorly this time. I'm afraid I've disappointed the hero. Meanwhile, Blanchett raised her hand and asked both the hero and the Demon Queen, could you possibly save the elf tribe? Without hesitation, Elizabeth answered, no. Leping, taken aback, nervously asked, Elizabeth, if anyone could do it, it would be you. Isn't there a way? Like resurrection magic? Elizabeth explained calmly, the maximum number of people I can resurrect at a time is about 10. But the entire elf tribe was wiped out, Elizabeth continued. There are tens of thousands of dead. Resurrection isn't a viable solution. First, the sheer number is beyond what my magic can handle. Second, a significant amount of dark magic still lingers in the corpses. Unless the bodies are completely purified, resurrection would only provoke more trouble from the Dark Guild. Third, the elves have grown reliant on the sacred tree's magic for survival. But even before it was destroyed, the tree's magic was depleting. Now that it's gone, there is no point in trying to revive it. Leping, hearing this, asked, if the tree is the problem, then why don't we just plant a new one? He rose from the ground and declared, as the saying goes, it takes 10 years to grow a tree and 100 years to grow a person. Even if it doesn't seem like much now, planting a seed gives us hope for the future. He walked over to the spot where the sacred tree once stood and inspected the roots. The roots are completely destroyed. There's no saving them, he said, scooping some soil into his hand. After a moment's inspection, he added, the soil here is still viable. It's no different from the soil back home. But if we use seeds from the outside, it will take far too long for a new tree to mature. Elizabeth was surprised by his plan. Is he thinking of replanting the sacred tree? She wondered. Blanchett was equally shocked. Replant the sacred tree? She exclaimed in disbelief. How could that be possible? The sacred tree was created when the first patriarch, Lord Twyla, sacrificed herself to invoke the arrival of the sacred tree. It cannot be replicated. Leping turned to them and said, there is a way to grow a tree faster than simply planting a seed, but I need some help. Without hesitation, Bruce, Elif, Sword Saint, and Annie raised their hands, saying in unison, just give us the instructions, and we'll do whatever it takes. Leping shook his head. There's no need for so many people. Miss Chi-Chi will be enough. Sword Saint, excited and eager to assist, asked, how can I help, Leping? Leping turned to her and asked, Miss Chi-Chi, Do you still have the birch branch you brought from home? Can you give it to me? Yes, I do, Sword Saint replied, although she was confused. But what do you plan to do with it? She handed the birch branch over to him. Leping accepted it with a smile and said, Miss Qiqi, I don't think this broken branch will be of much use to you, so I will take it back, all right? However, in Sword Saint's eyes, she interpreted his words differently, thinking that Leping was expressing disappointment in her recent performance. He's taking back the sacred wood sword, she thought bitterly. It must be a sign to reflect on my failures. Overcome with guilt, Sword Saint clenched her fist and pressed it against the ground. I'm sorry, she said. I won't let this happen again. Observing the scene, Bruce thought, Sir Leping is so strict that even someone as strong as the Sword Saint receives his reprimands. It's as if he's using her to warn the rest of us. I feel fortunate to be weaker right now. In fact, compared to the Sword Saint, our performance was even worse. Don't be disheartened. Annie was with Sword Saint the entire time, but she was too weak. That's why Big Brother Leping didn't even bother to reprimand her. He still sends her a magic fruit every month. If she doesn't show him some progress and demonstrate the power of Raphael, he'll be so disappointed in her. Sword Saint clenched her fists in frustration, her eyes blazing with anger. I don't deserve to be called the Sword Saint, she declared. Please don't call me that. I, Qiqi Saugus, will not forget today's humiliation. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, who had been observing everything from a distance, remarked, a clever trick, killing the monkey to scare the chicken. Let's see how you managed to plant the tree, Leping. The elf tribe is already in such a dire state. Large-scale resurrection is impossible, especially considering you don't have any magic power of your own. She smirked, thinking, no matter how strong you are, you can't break the fundamental rules of magic. Leping, unfazed by the skepticism, planted the birch branch into the ground and retrieved a special fertilizer from his bag. A blend he had crafted himself. The tree back home can grow from a simple cutting, he thought. If I plant it like this, the growth will accelerate significantly. He sprinkled some of the fertilizer onto the soil and then poured water over the birch, explaining, all it takes is a bit of fertilizer and some water to help the plant take root. The rest is up to time. Under normal conditions, it would start to root in about half a month. However, as Leping continued to water the tree, something extraordinary began to happen. The birch's roots expanded rapidly, burrowing deep into the earth. Suddenly, the entire ground began to shake. Leping was startled. Is this an earthquake? He wondered. But then he realized that the tremors were caused by the tree's roots. The newly planted tree was absorbing not only the nutrients from the old world tree, but also the remains of the animals and even the bodies of the zombified elves. This is the true arrival of the tree world, Leping murmured in awe. The ancient barrier surrounding the Holy Land, which had dissipated long ago, began to reappear, gradually enveloping the area. Leping, bewildered, turned to Elizabeth. Do you know what's happening? He asked. Elizabeth, equally astonished, could only watch as the birch began to emit a radiant glow, its branches sprouting flowers. Even more remarkably, the roots of the new sacred tree spread throughout the entire elf tribe's territory, causing flowers to bloom everywhere. As the flowers blossomed, new life began to emerge. The elves, who had been lost to the darkness, were returning to life, along with all the living beings sacrificed by Malfoy. The tree Leping had planted was giving them a second chance. Blanchett was stunned. A tremendous surge of magic is flooding the elf tribe, resurrecting all the dead, she thought, struggling to comprehend what she was witnessing. And this new sacred tree has only just begun to grow. When it fully matures, the blessings it will bestow upon us will far surpass those of the first generation. Leping, who was tending to the rapidly growing sacred tree, was taken aback. It grew that quickly? That's unusual, he thought, marveling at its accelerated growth. Then he realized the reason and reflected. In Huainan, you get tangerines, but in Huaibei, there are oranges. Because the elf tribe is saturated with magic power, the tree grew faster here. As expected, magic reigns supreme in this world. Elizabeth, who had been silently observing, was stunned. If I used dark magic to resurrect the elves, she thought, I would have to expend 10 times my own lifespan, and though I could recover eventually, it would leave me weakened. She was baffled by Leping's achievement. He managed such a large-scale resurrection without casting any spells. How did he do it? She examined the process unfolding before her. The flower buds serve as vessels for wandering souls, while the roots absorb and reconstruct their physical forms. I can roughly deduce the basic principles behind it, but the real challenge is the final step, merging the spirit with the body. That goes beyond the capabilities of magic. Could it be related to the water and fertilizer he brought from home? She dismissed the thought, reasoning, no. Even if those items are infused with magic, they wouldn't be enough to create life. If external items aren't the key, then the answer must lie elsewhere, a divine force. Her eyes widened as she realized the truth. There are no predefined rules? Then create them. The full scope of Leping's power became clear, and Elizabeth fell to her knees in a mix of awe and despair. He can achieve feats that no one else, not even I, can accomplish. No wonder the clown demon called him the creator. The onlookers were taken aback to see Elizabeth, usually so composed, appearing defeated in Leping's presence. Bruce, noticing the atmosphere, remarked, Elif, do you feel that? The aura of the elves. It feels different. Elif nodded. It's Sir Leping. He's resurrected everyone in the elf tribe. I can sense countless elves around us. Sword Saint, still in shock, added, The branch was a wasted resource in my hands, but in the hands of the brave hero, it became something extraordinary. Annie, despite having the red demon eyes, found herself unable to see through Leping's power anymore. Big Brother Leping is beyond my understanding now, she admitted. Leping, feeling a bit nervous from the attention, said modestly, I only helped as much as I could. He then approached Blanchett and added, The rest is up to you all. Blanchett, surprised, asked, What do you mean, brave hero? Leping explained, The saplings still need someone to care for them and nurture their growth. That responsibility, I leave to you. Blanchett hesitated before responding to Leping, her voice filled with uncertainty. I really can't take on this responsibility. Only a qualified elder is fit to care for the sacred tree. I harmed our people when I was controlled by the Dark Guild. I'm not worthy. Suddenly a thought struck her, and she pointed towards Elif. But it was Elif's mother who saved me, she said. She's a descendant of the previous elder. I recommend that Elif become the new elder of our tribe, and take on the task of caring for the sacred tree. Both Bruce and Elif were stunned at the suggestion, but Leping nodded in agreement. Yes, Elif, he said. Your mixed heritage might challenge the stereotypes of our secluded elf tribe and bring about much-needed change. Elif, however, felt a wave of self-doubt. How can I possibly become an elder? She murmured. Before she could protest further, Bruce intervened. I, Bruce, will support Elif to the best of my abilities, he declared. You can rest assured, brave hero. I promise to stand by her side. He then turned to his daughter and said, Remember what your mother always told you. If we are with the hero, we must always give our best. Elif took a deep breath and nodded. I will do my best, she agreed. Blanchett, visibly relieved, approached Elif and grasped her hand. I, Blanchett, will continue my duties as a general and assist you in managing the tribe, she said with a reassuring smile. But let's be honest. Our true priority is to keep the hero happy. Annie, watching the scene unfold from a distance, leaned over to Sword Saint and whispered, This is a redistribution of power. From now on, the Card Guild and the Elf Tribe will guard the southern part of the Brave Continent and fight against the Dark Guild. Sword Saint nodded, though there was a trace of disappointment in her eyes. I just wish I could do more for the hero, she admitted. Leping then turned to Elizabeth, his voice lighthearted. It's time to go home, he said. However, as he glanced over, he noticed Elizabeth sitting on the ground, looking unusually somber. What's wrong, Elizabeth? He asked with concern. Before they could leave, Sword Saint stepped forward, stopping Leping. Brave hero, I have a favor to ask, she said. Leping smiled gently. What is it, Miss Chi-Chi? I would like to ask you about the true meaning behind the Tai Chi sword, Sword Saint began. Ever since I started practicing the movements, I feel like my understanding of swordsmanship has blurred. My magic power becomes unstable and acts violently during combat, preventing me from reaching my full potential. Where did I go wrong? Please help me, brave hero. Leping's expression shifted, a mix of nervousness and seriousness crossing his face. You want me to help you with your Tai Chi sword, Miss Chi-Chi? He asked, folding his hands together. With a grave tone, he continued. Very well, I will tell you the truth. In the previous episode, we saw the Sword Saint ask Leping about the true meaning behind the Tai Chi sword and how she could improve. Leping, with a serious expression, replied, Actually, I almost forgot. The Sword Saint was stunned, asking in disbelief. He forgot? Leping scratched his head and told the Sword Saint, But Miss Chi-Chi, if you want to learn swordsmanship, I would suggest going to the Sword Saint Guild. Upon hearing this, the Sword Saint was taken aback, retreating in shock. Everyone around them was equally astonished, thinking, He's advising the Sword Saint to go to the Sword Saint Guild to learn swordsmanship? How horrifying and heartbreaking, Elif thought. Such a cruel and merciless response. Annie was equally surprised, thinking, The Sword Saint is so pitiful. The Sword Saint, her entire body trembling, asked, What do you mean go to the Sword Saint Guild to study? Does this mean, in the hero's eyes, my swordsmanship is that bad? She was filled with self-doubt, thinking, I taught the Sword Saint Guild all their swordsmanship, so what is the hero trying to say? Leping, seeing her distress, said, That's not what I meant. How should I put it? The thing that impressed me most about the Tai Chi sword was the final move, swordless form. He explained further, Wasn't something like the swordless form used by a Sword Saint Guild member during the guild competition in Tatano Town? It's just that I don't have magic, so I can't condense that kind of magic sword energy. He paused and continued, So, I guess it's pretty much the same, like this, right? With that, Leping pointed 2 fingers towards the Sword Saint, showing her the essence of the swordless form. In that instant, the Sword Saint's soul seemed to detach from her body, drifting into the clouds. The light was so intense that she closed her eyes. When she opened them, she found herself on a floating island surrounded by clouds and mountains. Stunned, she noticed a castle in the distance, perched on the floating island. As she wondered how to reach it, a flying sword appeared beneath her feet. She landed on the sword, and it carried her toward the island. Upon reaching the floating island, she saw children practicing their sword skills. The Sword Saint was confused, wondering, What kind of place is this? It wasn't just children practicing swordsmanship. There was also an elderly man who appeared to be a Taoist master. The old man instructed the children to attack the Sword Saint. She was taken by surprise as the children overwhelmed and defeated her in an instant. Shocked, the Sword Saint wondered, What just happened? In the blink of an eye, she found herself becoming one of the old man's disciples, practicing swordsmanship alongside the children. She trained relentlessly, calming her mind under the waterfall. Yet each time she challenged the children again, she was defeated. Time passed. Autumn arrived, and she challenged them again, only to be defeated once more. Winter came, and she faced them again, still unable to win. After countless attempts, the old man called her over and offered her some tea. As she drank, memories came flooding back. I came here to learn the Tai Chi swordless form. Looking at the cup of tea in her hand, realization dawned on her. She closed her eyes, began practicing Tai Chi, and focused deeply on feeling the essence of the sword. However, she pushed herself too hard and suffered an internal injury. Confused, she wondered, What am I doing wrong? Then, it clicked. She needed to let go of the sword itself. She began practicing without holding the sword, focusing on feeling the air, water, and her surroundings. She sought to understand the nature of swordsmanship, not through force, but through connection with the elements around her. Striving to grasp the true essence of the swordless form, she became so focused on her training that she lost awareness of her surroundings. Years passed, and with time, she mastered countless swordsmanship techniques. The young boys who once easily defeated her were no longer her match. The old man, her teacher, offered her some tea and asked gently, Have you learned the way of Tai Chi? The Sword Saint, confused, asked, Master, what do you mean by Tai Chi? Did I come here to learn Tai Chi? I had forgotten. The old man looked at her with kindness and replied, It is time for you to return. Surprised, the Sword Saint asked, "What do you mean by return?" Without answering directly, the old man reminded her, "Forget yourself and become one with nature. Do not seek to control the Tai Chi, but rather, let it integrate with you." The Sword Saint nodded in understanding. "I see. I cannot repay you for this enlightenment, but I beg you, please tell me your identity and name. I will always hold you in my heart with the utmost respect." The old man smiled and said, "My identity is unimportant, but if you wish to know, my name is Zhang Sanfeng." As the Sword Saint returned to reality, the old man remained behind, feeling a sense of loneliness. Who will come next? He wondered. Meanwhile, Lei Ping was in shock as he watched the Sword Saint floating in the air. What happened?" he stammered, barely believing what he saw. The Sword Saint, after her profound experience with Tai Chi, had broken through and achieved the status of a 4-star demon king. Annie, stunned, exclaimed, "Big Brother Le Ping helped the Sword Saint, no, Senior Chi-Chi, break through 3 levels." Elif and Uncle Boss were equally shocked. 3 breakthroughs in a row? Elif murmured. "This is the level of the Demon King. It's incredible. Maybe in Sir Le Ping's eyes, these levels are insignificant." The Sword Saint descended gracefully and bowed before Le Ping, thanking him for his guidance. "I, Chi-Chi Saugus, have realized my mistakes. I will follow your instructions, brave hero, and return to the Sword Saint Guild to start from scratch. I will no longer obsess over swordsmanship, but will devote myself fully to Tai Chi." With these words, she left. Le Ping, watching her depart, called after her, "We will meet again someday." However, thought to herself, perhaps it's because my level is still too low. But the truly powerful people in this world are so unpredictable. After Chi-Chi left, Le Ping turned to Annie and Uncle Boss. "What are your plans now? Would you like Elizabeth to teleport you somewhere?" Elif answered first. "I don't know much about the elf tribe, so I'd like to stay here and gradually get familiar with it." Uncle Boss chimed in, "I've decided to move the Card Guild's headquarters to the elf tribe and help manage it from there." Annie, feeling a bit unsteady, said, "I'm still dizzy from teleporting, so I think I'll take a puppet ride back on my own. Thank you for your care, Big Brother Le Ping. I've also decided to go somewhere else." Le Ping smiled at them and said, "Since you all have your own plans, Elizabeth and I will head back first." Elizabeth, still disappointed with herself after witnessing Le Ping's magic regression, remained quiet. Le Ping comforted her. "Don't worry, Elizabeth. It's time to go home." Elizabeth nodded and summoned a teleportation circle. In moments, they were back at Le Ping's house. Meanwhile, as the Sword Saint was making her way back to the Sword Saint Guild, she noticed something unusual in the desert. 2 men were locked in fierce combat with an imposing figure. Recognizing them, she realized they were members of the Sword Saint Guild, Elder Sword Bali and Grey Sword Ash. Grey Sword Ash, panting heavily, called out to Elder Sword Bali, "No wonder a giant Bear Guild member transformed into an apostle during the last guild competition. It all makes sense now." Elder Sword Bali, focused on the fight, nodded in agreement. "I didn't think those straightforward beasts would degenerate to this extent." The one they were fighting was no ordinary opponent. He was a demon of the Dark Guild, one of the 6 pillars, known as Faradzadag Samawi, a 1-star demon lord and former president of the Giant Bear Guild. Faradzadag Samawi, looming over them, sneered. "Simple and straightforward, huh? Is that how you humans see us? Ha ha ha. No wonder the beasts have never risen to become a major force." Without hesitation, Faradzadag Samawi leaped into the air, preparing to launch a powerful attack. He unleashed his full strength, using muscle release 100%, but both Elder Sword Bali and Grey Sword Ash managed to dodge just in time. Grey Sword Ash, catching his breath, turned to Elder Sword Bali. "This opponent is at the level of a demon lord. What should we do, Elder Bali?" Elder Sword Bali's expression remained calm. "Don't underestimate yourself, Ash. Remember, after drinking the barley tea our Sword Saint Guild acquired, you too reached the level of demon lord. Now let's bring him down." Without further delay, Elder Sword Bali activated his skill, Flashing Needle, sending swift, precise strikes that restricted Faradzadag Samawi's movements. Grey Sword Ash quickly seized the moment, combining his sealing techniques, seal, metal, seal, water, and seal, soil, to form his ultimate technique. Using these elements, he created a massive concrete casing that encased Farazadog Samawi's entire body. Wasting no time, Grey Sword Ash charged forward, wielding two metal rods as if they were swords. He thrust them into Farazadog Samawi's encased form, initiating his attack. Blunt swordsmanship, vibration. The vibrations caused the concrete to tighten around Farazadog Samawi, his body starting to crack under the pressure. But Grey Sword Ash knew this wasn't enough to defeat a demon lord. Summoning all his strength, he amplified the power of the vibrations to their maximum, intensifying the crushing force around Farazadog Samawi's body. With a final surge of power, the cement casing began to compress further, and Farazadog Samawi's body groaned under the pressure. However, Grey Sword Ash didn't let up, determined to see the battle through to its end. As Grey Sword Ash's vibration technique intensified, the very ground beneath them began to tremble. Farazadog Samawi cried out in pain, but Grey Sword Ash did not relent. Determined to ensure the Demon Lord's defeat, he pushed harder, amplifying the vibrations to their maximum. Elder Sword Bali watched from the side, nodding approvingly. Among the 10 colored swords, I've always had the highest hopes for you. You may not have the sharpness of the blue sword, but your persistence and hard work, combined with your unique blunt swordsmanship, are admirable. Moments later, Grey Sword Ash's vibration technique came to a halt, and he ensured that Farazadog Samawi was completely sealed in the concrete. Elder Sword Bali praised him, saying, "Good job. As I said, as long as you believe in yourself, you'll soon surpass Blue Sword." Grey Sword Ash humbly responded, "Thank you, Elder Bali. I've never aimed to surpass anyone. I simply want to do my best, step by step." However, their victory was short-lived. Suddenly, Farazadog Samawi broke free from the concrete that encased him. Both Grey Sword Ash and Elder Sword Bali stood in shock as the Demon Lord emerged unscathed. "Elder Bali, do you feel that ominous aura?" Grey Sword Ash asked fearfully. Elder Sword Bali quickly regained his composure. "Don't panic. Use all your magic power and activate the sword shield now." Both Grey Sword Ash and Elder Sword Bali summoned all their magic and activated the triple sword shield technique, a powerful defense designed to block even the strongest of attacks. But as the dust began to clear, Farazadog Samawi casually flicked his hand, sending a single, devastating blow that shattered their shield with ease. The attack was so powerful that it not only destroyed their technique, but also left both Elder Sword Bali and Grey Sword Ash severely wounded, lying unconscious on the ground. Farazadog Samawi, now fully awakened as a first-star Demon King, laughed maniacally. "The Dark Gear is just a transitional tool. Only the chaotic power of the Dark Sea is truly limitless. Everyone below the Demon King is nothing more than an ant. I've likely surpassed even Lord Malfoy in power now." Just as Farazadog Samawi prepared to unleash his dark energy to finish off the injured swordsman, the Sword Saint appeared from above, splitting his body in two with a swift and precise strike before he could react. As Elder Sword Bali slowly regained consciousness, he opened his eyes to see the Sword Saint standing before him. "Why are you here?" the Sword Saint asked, her tone stern. "Weren't you ordered to guard the guild headquarters?" Elder Sword Bali, still recovering, explained, "I brought Grey South to investigate a small nation, hoping to find something that could help us combat the Dark Guild. As for the guild, under my command, they are successfully repelling the Dark Guild's attacks." The 10 colored swords were sent to various parts of the demon realm to gather information. But apart from the elf tribe, there's no trace of any so-called small nation in the entire southern region. "I've been tricked by those three, damn it." The Sword Saint glanced at him and said, "It doesn't matter now. I'll take you back to the guild. Once we return, please gather everyone immediately. I have something important to announce." Meanwhile, in the demon realm, deep within a goblin cave, a party of adventurers was cautiously exploring. The yellow-cloaked mentor warned Green Sword, "I've heard the goblins here are completely different from the ones outside. They've had no contact with the outside world and are said to be primitive and unreasonable barbarians." Green Sword, unfazed, reassured him, "Don't worry, you've got me, the Green Sword, with you this time. And not just me, but Sir Travi as well. If the goblins are barbaric, we'll handle them." Travi, a pink-haired elf, smirked. If I weren't repaying a favor to your Sword Saint Guild, I wouldn't have teamed up with you. You're the ones who have the advantage here. A blue-haired girl in the group shuddered. Unreasonable barbarians? That sounds terrifying. The yellow mentor sighed. If it weren't for the lack of competitions recently, I wouldn't even be taking on bounty missions. Sure, it's profitable, but I'm risking my life here. It's not the same as selling tickets. Green Sword, noticing the blue-haired girl's anxiety, smiled and patted her on the shoulder. Don't worry, I'll protect you. Suddenly, the blue-haired girl gasped. The magic gem is reacting strongly. A large number of life forms are approaching us. In the previous episode, Green Sword reassured the group, declaring, "Don't worry, I'll protect everyone." At the same time, the blue-haired girl warned urgently, "The magic gem is reacting strongly. A large number of life forms are approaching us." Moving forward, Green Sword announced they had been discovered. A horde of goblins was advancing toward them, weapons drawn. Drawing back his cactus-like sword, he instructed the others to ready themselves for battle. As the goblins charged, the teams steeled themselves for combat. However, they had underestimated their opponents. The pink-haired elf, once so confident, was swiftly defeated and badly injured. In disbelief, he thought, how could these barbaric goblins, who lack any understanding of magic, overpower us so easily? Spotting him still alive, a goblin mercilessly ended his life. One by one, the entire team fell. Even Green Sword, who had spoken so boldly, was killed, and the powerful yellow mentor met a brutal end, his head severed from his body. Only the mage girl remained. The goblins captured her, their intentions evident as they circled her with saliva dripping from their mouths. The goblin leader, licking blood from his weapon, grinned and commanded, "Let's begin." Terrified, the mage girl pleaded for mercy, but the goblins moved closer, tearing at her clothes as she screamed for release. Then, the unexpected happened. The goblin leader, who had defeated the entire Green Sword adventurer team, lay lifeless on the ground, his body limp and discarded like a broken doll. The mage girl, who had moments before begged for her life, now stood in control, her expression cold. She had wrested the dark gear from the goblin's body. With a slight smile, she murmured, "Adding a bit of excitement makes things less dull. But no matter how fierce a barbarian is, he's as obedient as a dog in front of me. How boring." Pressing the dark gear to her chest, she absorbed its power, revealing herself as Ruth Bader, one of the 6 pillars of the Dark Guild and a level 5-star demon sovereign. The infusion of the dark gear allowed her to break through to the next realm. Just then, sensing a hidden presence, she spoke sharply, "You've seen enough. Show yourself." Stepping forward was the Lord of the Sea of Darkness, Azathoth, cloaked in his sinister aura. Transforming into his human form, he approached Ruth and remarked, "If you desire the Dark Gear's power, there's no need to conceal your identity and pursue the seeds of Malfoy. I can grant it to you on one condition." Ruth smirked and replied, "I've noticed you and the president aren't exactly close. Are you suggesting a betrayal of the guild?" She attempted to ensnare him with her fatal attraction, but Azathoth remained unfazed. "Don't waste your magic," he replied coolly. "I have no interest in your ambitions, and I have no desire to betray Malfoy." Ruth Bader, surprised, asked Azathoth, "So, what exactly do you want me to do for you?" She thought to herself, "My charm can even confuse those at the Demon Lord level. Could he be at the Demon King level at least?" But she quickly dismissed the thought and said, "I haven't even reached the Demon Lord level myself. How can I be of any help to you, Lord Azathoth?" Azathoth laughed. "You're such a cunning woman. Are you afraid I can't give you terms that would be to your satisfaction?" He continued, "The Dark Gear is merely a transitional tool. If you sign a contract with me, I can grant you power tenfold." As he spoke, a chaotic energy surged from his mouth. This chaotic power is sufficient to allow you to skip the Demon Lord level entirely and ascend directly to the Demon King level. It's equivalent to absorbing over 1,000 Dark Gears. Your charms are indeed unique, which is why I chose you. But I won't force you. You may decide for yourself. Ruth Bader was stunned by his offer. If I absorb this chaotic power, I could directly ascend to the Demon King level? She pondered the proposition, considering the weight of Azathoth's offer. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, in Leping's garden, he tended to his crops. He had just planted the 5-element pea in his field and marveled at the magic of this world. The magical world truly is wondrous, he thought. These plants seem to understand human nature, unlike anything I grow back home. He then gathered some fresh vegetables and thought it was time to head back. What Leping didn't realize was that the 5-element pea was no ordinary plant. As he walked away, the pea began to feel anxious, sensing the watchful stares of the other plants. Back inside, Leping asked, "Elizabeth, would you like some freshly picked apples?" Elizabeth, lounging on the couch and munching on snacks, replied, "Apples aren't as good as snacks." Leping, a bit concerned, said, "You know you shouldn't eat too much of that stuff. I'll go make lunch." But Elizabeth ignored him, popping open a carbonated drink and sipping it, looking downcast. Leping couldn't help but notice. What's gotten into her? She's been so down ever since we returned from the elf tribe. After a long sip, Elizabeth angrily smashed the empty bottle. Leping, bewildered, wondered, did I offend her somehow? Is she disappointed in me as a hero? I have no magic, and I can't wield a sword. Maybe she thinks I'm a dull student for not meeting her expectations, he thought carefully, shaking his head. No, that's not right. Even if I can't learn magic or swordsmanship, I've done my best to unite forces outside to resist the Dark Guild. Even if I borrowed her name to do so, it's still a small achievement. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was fuming, thinking, ridiculous. How can Leping be above the rules? If that's true, what was the point of all the pain I endured in training? She forced herself to calm down, reflecting, whatever, it's pointless. Maybe I'm just a stepping stone for him to become famous, but he doesn't even care about fame. If he wanted it, he wouldn't be here. Maybe it's me overestimating my own abilities. With a sigh, she thought, no matter how hard I try, I can't surpass him. I might as well just give up. She slumped back onto the couch, recalling her past as the Demon Queen, when she once ruled the world. What use is my strength as a 7-star demon god now, she wondered. Maybe it's better to just enjoy life. Watching her from the kitchen, Leping observed her unusual mood swings, unhappy, irritable, anxious, lazy, and constantly snacking. Could it be? He wondered. Is she on her period? But I've lived with her for over a year and never noticed symptoms like this. Well, this magical world does make it normal for a demon queen to differ from humans, he thought to himself. Leping then announced, "Lunch is ready. Come and eat." Elizabeth joined him at the dining table. Her mood visibly lifted at the sight of curry rice. "This isn't all I made," Leping said with a smile. "I also prepared a stew for you." Elizabeth looked at him with mild curiosity. "What stew?" she asked, but her attention remained on the curry rice as she began eating. After finishing, she stood up, saying, "You can eat the stew yourself. I'm going back to my snacks." "Wait," Leping said, gesturing toward the stew. "Just give it a try." As he lifted the lid, a bright golden light and a wonderful aroma filled the air. "This dish is red dates, eggs, and tremella soup," he explained. "I stewed it in brown sugar water. It may not be as refreshing as pudding, but it's good for you." Elizabeth, intrigued, sat back down. Leping took a spoonful, blew on it to cool it, and offered it to her. "Here, give it a try," he urged with a smile. Suspicious, Elizabeth thought. Is he trying to poison me? But Leping's earnest expression softened her doubt, and she finally took a bite. As she did, she found herself transported to an unfamiliar place. Stunned, she thought, is this an illusion? A hot spring? Looking around, she realized she was in what could only be described as a brown sugar hot spring. To her surprise, she wasn't alone. Beside her were Auntie Egg, Granny Red Date, and Miss Tremella. Granny Red Date smiled warmly and said, "The brown sugar hot spring is excellent for your blood circulation and restoring your strength. Now, let us provide you with our special one-stop service." Elizabeth, bewildered, wondered, what kind of service are they talking about? Miss Tremella smiled at Elizabeth and said, "Of course. This is a full-body massage spa service to nourish your yin and beautify your skin." The three attendants gently covered Elizabeth with a towel, lifted her out of the hot spring, and carefully laid her down. Surprised and confused, Elizabeth asked, "What on earth do you intend to do?" "Don't worry," Miss Tremella reassured her. "Just relax. I'll start with a hand massage. Close your eyes and enjoy." As Miss Tremella began massaging her hands, Elizabeth felt a wave of relaxation wash over her. Her hands felt so good that she couldn't pull them away. Auntie Egg chimed in. "Hand massages can calm a person instantly, removing any resistance." Elizabeth's body felt light and relaxed, as if the rules of the magical realm were at work. Auntie Egg added, "My egg liquid back massage will make your skin as smooth as mine." Elizabeth wanted to resist, but the pleasure was overwhelming, and she found herself unable to. As the two continued their massage, Granny Red Date stepped forward. "It's my turn now," she announced. "Granny Red Date," Auntie Egg said with a laugh. "She's not relaxed yet. Isn't it a bit soon for you to jump in? But her foundation is strong. She should be able to handle it." Hearing this, Elizabeth felt a pang of concern. Isn't this just a massage? Looking at that trembling old woman, I doubt she can do much. But her thoughts were interrupted as Granny Red Date stretched her arms, transforming from a frail elder into a muscular powerhouse, looking as if she could rival a warrior. Shocked, Elizabeth stared in disbelief. Granny Red Date looked at her with a determined glint and said, "I won't hold back." "Don't be afraid," Auntie Egg said reassuringly. "Granny Red Date's foot massage can open up your meridians and improve your blood circulation." With that, Granny Red Date grabbed Elizabeth's leg and used her ultimate technique, sending a jolt of sensation through Elizabeth, who cried out from the intensity. Miss Tremella, a level 9-star saint, infused yin energy into Elizabeth's body, while Auntie Egg, an 11-star saint, enhanced her skin's radiance, and Granny Red Date, a 17-star saint, replenished her blood circulation. Elizabeth's entire body felt revitalized, and with a final surge, she broke through to the 8-star demon god realm. Back in the real world, Leping noticed her slightly rosy complexion and asked, "How do you feel? Do you feel warmer now?" Thinking to himself, "Her face does seem a little flushed. I hope it helped." Elizabeth slowly opened her eyes, remaining silent. Concerned, Leping asked, "Elizabeth, are you okay? Was the taste too different to handle?" In Elizabeth's mind, however, she imagined Leping saying, "I can help you level up using the rule's power, but you'll still never catch up to me. The gap between us is so vast that there's nothing you can do." Determined yet unable to change the situation, Elizabeth replied, "The rules have spoken. It doesn't matter what I eat. The outcome remains the same." Leping, noticing her reluctance, said gently, "All right then. Rest up. I won't disturb you." Reflecting to himself, the rules are indeed powerful, and it seems the food therapy wasn't as effective as I'd hoped. Leping told Elizabeth, "I want to go outside and practice with Alpha. Is that okay?" He thought to himself, during the time of the rules, her moods fluctuate greatly, making her unhappy with everything. It's better for me to disappear on my own. Elizabeth, lying on the couch, glanced at him and said, "It's up to you." Upon hearing this, Leping stepped outside to practice with Alpha. However, he was surprised to find that Alpha was not there. He wondered, where did he go? He has been hanging out with Wang Chai lately. Maybe they went out for a walk. Meanwhile, Alpha was outside with the robotic dog Wang Chai. Hearing a strange noise, he asked Wang Chai for help. As time passed, the strange sound grew louder and more frequent. Alpha turned to Wang Chai and said, "There's a buzzing sound in my ears lately. It's making it impossible for me to sleep." Wang Chai, unimpressed, asked, "What kind of sound? I don't hear anything. Are you just looking for an excuse to be lazy again?" Alpha quickly apologized and insisted, "I'm not joking, Senior Wang Kai. There's definitely a buzzing sound. It's so annoying." Wang Kai, suddenly noticing an anomaly on his radar, interrupted, "Be on guard. There's a suspicious sound coming from 3 kilometers away." It was Ruth Bader, a member of the Green Sword Adventure Team and one of the 6 pillars of the Dark Guild. She smiled to herself and thought, "I didn't expect to gather such valuable information. Everything is proceeding smoothly according to my plan. This is where the legendary hero and the Demon Queen Elizabeth live." Ruth recalled the instructions from Azathoth, the enigmatic leader of the Dark Guild who had allied with Lord Malfoy. He had commanded her, "If you want to gain more dark power, You must help me eliminate the one Malfoy is obsessed with, the Demon Queen Elizabeth. Ruth grinned, thinking, this mysterious figure, Azathoth, who formed the Dark Guild with Lord Malfoy, clearly harbors many secrets. Although I don't know where that sea of darkness he came from is, his ability to ascend instantly to the Demon King level proves his power far surpasses Malfoy's, but I don't care about their dynamic. I'll align myself with whoever offers the greatest benefits. This competition between the strong is a perfect opportunity to gain more for myself. She reflected on her unique skill, Fatal Attraction, which allowed her to charm and deceive enemies, even those much stronger than her. Even if Elizabeth is too powerful for me, the legendary hero is just a man. He'll be easy to control. Lost in thought, Ruth didn't notice Wang Kai launching a missile attack. Startled, she dodged the powerful strike and turned to see her two goblin allies, both equipped with dark gear and elevated to demon sovereign status, killed instantly. Shocked, Ruth thought, these goblins were crucial to my plan. They were supposed to help me hunt down Elizabeth. What kind of attack was that? It was so fast. Before she could recover, a chilling sensation coursed through her body, as though warning her of impending doom. She turned and froze in terror as Wang Kai pointed every weapon at her. His cold voice demanded, "Who are you? What is your goal?" Ruth trembled, realizing any movement or wrong word could mean instant death. What is this creature? A monster? A magic tool? Or something else entirely? She thought, terrified. It's scanning me. If it uncovers my secrets, I'm finished. Alpha, sensing the tension, stepped forward and tried to intervene. Senior Wang Kai, you're scaring the young lady. It's clear she's just a pitiful girl being hunted by monsters. Puffing up his chest, he added, by the way, I am the right-hand man of the legendary hero, the true holy sword, Lord Alpha. Wang Kai shot him a glare. Shut up. Don't reveal too much information about the master. I need to analyze the suspicious party first. Ruth's mind raced. If they finish scanning me, it's over. I have to act first. Without hesitation, she activated her skill, Fatal Attraction, targeting Alpha. Alpha's expression shifted as he fell into a dreamlike state. In his vision, he stood side by side with the legendary hero Leping, fighting against powerful enemies. What are you thinking about, partner? Dream Leping asked with a smile. In the dream, Alpha saw himself as a powerful mentor, teaching Leping legendary techniques and swordsmanship. Together, they defeated countless foes, including the formidable Black Dragon. Alpha felt a surge of pride, believing himself to be the key to Leping's success. Both Leping and Holy Sword Alpha were overjoyed to have achieved something extraordinary. Their next target was clear, the Demon Queen Elizabeth. Together, the legendary hero, Leping and Holy Sword Alpha set sail for the Demon Continent to confront her. Upon reaching the Demon Continent, they finally stood face to face with the mighty Demon Queen Elizabeth. With determination, Leping wielded Holy Sword Alpha and successfully defeated her. Afterward, Alpha transformed into his human form. Leping turned to him and said, "When I was lost, you guided me. When I was conflicted, you led me. Thank you, my good partner." Holy Sword Alpha chuckled and replied, "No need to be so formal. This is the bond we share, my good partner." Meanwhile, Wang Chai was still under the effects of Ruth Bader's Fatal Attraction charm skill. In his trance, he dreamt of a happy life with his master, Leping, a life where Leping played with him, cared for him, and gave him more attention than Elizabeth. Completely captivated by the charm, Wang Kai lost control of his body, and the weapons he had aimed at Ruth Bader began to lower. Ruth Bader smirked triumphantly and said, "As long as desire exists, it's impossible to resist my charm, no matter how strong you are." However, she had underestimated Wang Chai. Unlike ordinary magical tools, Wang Kai was the very creation that had nearly defeated the Demon Queen Elizabeth herself. Suddenly, a system notification appeared on Wang Kai's interface. Virus intrusion detected. Scanning all system software. Virus location found. Starting virus removal. 13%, 58%, 78%, 99%. Patch installation complete. System vulnerability resolved. As the system rebooted, Wang Kai snapped out of Ruth Bader's charm. Instantly, he rearmed his weapons and aimed them at her. Ruth Bader froze in shock. How is this possible? My charm didn't work? Holy Sword Alpha, however, was still under Ruth Bader's influence and laughed uncontrollably, lost in his delusions. Wang Kai, now fully operational, glared at Ruth Bader and asked coldly, "Who are you? Why did you invade my system and attempt to make me happy? Even if you don't seem to be a direct threat, I can't allow your intentions to remain unclear. Eliminating you seems like the safest course of action." Ruth Bader, trembling with fear, thought, how could my Demon King magic fail? I don't understand. Isn't Elizabeth in the legends also a Demon King? How am I about to die before I even get the chance to meet her? Before Wang Chai could strike, Lei Ping's voice rang out in the distance. Wang Chai! Alpha! Wang Chai immediately barked in recognition and retracted all his weapons, rushing to greet his master. Lei Ping approached and asked, I heard a commotion here. What's going on? Ruth Bader, feeling relieved, thought, no doubt about it, this must be the legendary hero. If he were an ordinary man, he'd be much easier to manipulate. She quickly decided to play the damsel in distress, thinking, the trope of a hero saving a beauty always works. Let me satisfy that fantasy of his. But her plan failed. Instead of addressing her, Lei Ping walked over to Alpha and asked, Alpha, why are you laughing? Alpha continued laughing like a madman. Unresponsive, confused, Lei Ping slapped Alpha hard across the face and asked, Are you okay? Alpha snapped back to reality, looking dazed. What happened? He asked. Lei Ping shook his hand after the slap and replied, You scared me. I thought you'd lost your mind. Have you not been sleeping well? Alpha scratched his head and muttered, It's possible. Lei Ping sighed. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Let's head back and chop some wood. Ruth Bader, still lying on the ground, waited expectantly for Lei Ping to help her up. To her frustration, he didn't even spare her a glance as he started walking away. Realizing her plan had failed, Ruth Bader stood up, brushed herself off, and called out, Excuse me, can you help me? Lei Ping turned toward the voice and asked Ruth Bader, Who are you? At Lei Ping's home, Elizabeth was enjoying her snacks when she suddenly heard voices outside. Moments later, Holy Sword Alpha and Wang Kai returned home. However, they were not alone. Lei Ping had brought Ruth Bader along. Upon seeing another woman in the house, Elizabeth's expression turned furious. Lei Ping gently asked Ruth Bader, Are you feeling any pain anywhere? Ruth Bader, attempting to charm him, replied softly, Well, I'm still a little dizzy. I'll just take some rest. Lei Ping carefully laid her down on the couch. Rest well, he said kindly. I'll get you a cup of tea. Elizabeth, watching the scene unfold, couldn't believe her eyes. Her anger boiled over as she glared at Holy Sword Alpha and Wang Kai. Both of them, realizing her fury, stammered nervously. We didn't do anything. Elizabeth, not listening, swung a punch at them. Alpha immediately transformed into his sword form, avoiding the blow, leaving poor Wang Chai to take the hit. The force of the punch sent Wang Chai rolling outside the house. Desperately trying to explain, Wang Kai called out, You've misunderstood everything. But Elizabeth ignored him, landing another punch. You picked someone up again, didn't you? You're ignoring my warnings, aren't you? She shouted. Inside the house, Ruth Bader, observing the fiery woman, thought, She's the legendary Demon Queen Elizabeth? I seem to have accidentally caused a quarrel between her and that weapon. A sly smile crossed her face. If I can capture the legendary hero Lei Ping, I can kill with a borrowed sword and fulfill my promise to Azathoth. It's time to capture him. She activated her fatal attraction skill to charm Lei Ping. To her shock, it didn't work. Confused, Ruth Bader wondered, Wait, what went wrong? My fatal attraction didn't work on him at all? Lei Ping walked over to her and offered a cup of barley tea. Here, have some tea. It might help you feel better, he said kindly. Ruth Bader, furious at her failed charm, tried again, thinking, That's impossible. As long as you're a man, you cannot resist it. For a brief second, Lei Ping appeared captivated by the charm, but then he broke free. Looking at her with genuine concern, he asked, Your eyes are twitching. Are you feeling unwell? Perhaps you were frightened by a monster outside? Ruth Bader's eyes reddened in frustration. She couldn't believe her skill had failed again. Lei Ping smiled gently and said, Don't be nervous. Just relax. Once you've recovered, we'll help you return to the outer town. Ruth Bader reluctantly took the tea. As she sipped it, she felt a surge of magical power coursing through her body. Her entire being began blooming with pure energy, and she was immediately promoted to the 2-star Demon King level. Leping, noticing her reaction, asked, "Do you feel better?" Ruth Bader's body trembled as she cried out, "Ah! What did you give me to drink?" Dark energy began seeping out of her, and she screamed in pain. Panicked, Leping scratched his head and asked, "What's wrong? Are you allergic to wheat?" Elizabeth approached calmly and said, "It's obvious. She's infected by a contract with the Sea of Darkness, like Chi-Chi before." Leping turned to her, alarmed. "Then shouldn't you save her, like you did with Miss Chi-Chi?" Elizabeth scoffed. "Save her? Don't even think about it. You're asking me even though you know the situation. You gave her barley tea to force her to cancel the contract. What she's experiencing now is just the rejection process. Do you think I don't know?" Ruth Bader, trembling in agony, managed to gasp. "You're trying to use this as an opportunity to show off the greatness of the Creator?" Suddenly, dark insect-like creatures began crawling out of Ruth Bader's mouth. Elizabeth narrowed her eyes as Leping's expression twisted in disgust. "Is this the same magical insect from before?" he exclaimed. The magical insect spoke, addressing Leping and Elizabeth. "I was so careful this time. How did you find me?" It turned toward Elizabeth and hissed, "You and I have an irreconcilable grudge. I will curse you with my chaotic power." Before it could finish its threat, Leping grabbed his cleaning tool and obliterated the insect instantly. He sighed in relief. "That scared me to death. Luckily, it was just some dirt." Elizabeth glared at Ruth Bader and demanded, "What's your purpose in coming here?" Trembling, Ruth stammered, Please don't misunderstand. I was forced to do this. My contract with Azathoth was nullified so easily. This development has completely exceeded my expectations," she thought, panic filling her mind. Elizabeth's anger flared, her voice sharp. "Don't think you can lie to me." Releasing a wave of her immense power, she made Ruth's entire body tremble. This pressure, isn't she just a demon king? Why do I feel as small as an ant before her? Ruth thought, frozen in fear. Leping stepped between them, gently pushing Elizabeth aside. Elizabeth has been in a bad mood lately. "Don't mind her," he reassured Ruth. Turning to her, he said calmly, "Don't be nervous. You mentioned you were forced. Does this have something to do with the Dark Guild? Just explain to us slowly." Ruth saw an opportunity and seized it. Grabbing onto Leping's leg, she cried, "It's the Dark Guild joining hands with Azathoth of the Sea of Darkness. They forced me to work for them. I didn't want to do anything bad, so I ran away in secret, but I didn't know they'd plant something so evil in my body." With a soft and pleading tone, she begged, "Please, Sir Leping, save me from the Dark Guild." Leping, visibly flustered, said, no problem, but let go of me first. Let's talk about this in detail." Afterward, Leping provided Ruth with some clothes to change into. However, the outfit was too tight, emphasizing her figure. Elizabeth's face turned red with irritation. "Those clothes were made for me, not for you," she snapped. Ruth smiled and replied, "I'm just borrowing them for a bit. Don't be so stingy, Lady Demon Queen." Elizabeth, unfazed by Ruth's provocation, warned, "No matter what your purpose is, I order you to leave before tomorrow." Feigning sincerity, Ruth smiled and said, "To be honest, Lady Demon Queen, I was originally sent to assassinate you. But after being purified by Sir Leping, I've completely turned over a new leaf. Of course, if you insist I leave, I won't dare disobey. But if Sir Leping wants me to stay, I won't dare go against his wishes." Elizabeth's fury boiled over. "Shame on you. Do you think you can stay here and eat and drink for free? That's ridiculous. Do you really think he'll let you stay?" Ruth chuckled softly and replied, "As they say, a hero can only be tempted by a beautiful woman. Maybe it's because of my perfect figure, but looking at you, Lady Demon Queen, you probably don't understand that." Taken aback, Elizabeth glanced at herself and muttered, "You think this is what I look like?" She realized she had been neglecting her appearance lately. However, for the mighty Demon Queen, this was not an issue. Using her negative attribute conversion skill, she transformed back into her most beautiful form, leaving Ruth speechless. With a confident smile, Elizabeth asked, "Is this the perfect body you were talking about?" She approached Ruth, pressing her chest against hers. "Where is your confidence now? Look closely. You're nothing in front of this demon queen. However, Ruth's figure turned out to be more voluptuous than Elizabeth's. Shocked, Elizabeth shouted, "No way!" Hearing the commotion, Leping burst into the room. "What's going on?" he asked. As soon as Ruth saw him, she grabbed Elizabeth's hand and slapped herself, pretending to cry. "Sister Elizabeth, if I've done something wrong, I'll fix it." Elizabeth, unfazed by the act, thought to herself, "What is she planning now?" Leping looked at Elizabeth and asked, "Elizabeth, what does this mean?" Ruth, still crying, said, "Sir Leping, don't blame Sister Elizabeth. Although you saw me being punished, it must have been my fault." Leping tried to calm her down. "Don't cry. This is just a misunderstanding. Elizabeth isn't like that. Right, Elizabeth?" Ruth smirked internally, thinking, "You're falling right into the trap of self-justification. No matter how much you defend her, as long as I keep admitting fault, you'll side with me." Elizabeth, furious, retorted, "There's no misunderstanding. I just want to beat her up. Is there an issue with that?" Leping nervously called her name. "Elizabeth?" Annoyed, Elizabeth snapped, "What is it?" "Well," Leping said calmly, "I believe you must have your reasons for doing this." Ruth was stunned. Leping turned to her and said, "You must understand. Elizabeth is the demon queen. Her magical power is incredible. She likely saw some leftover evil within your body. Maybe her methods are a bit rough, but it's for your own good. Please be patient and cooperate." He then excused himself. "I won't bother you anymore. Carry on." Ruth, trembling in fear, tried to stop him. Her plan to use Leping as a shield against Elizabeth had completely backfired. Elizabeth glared at Ruth Bader and said furiously, "Such a clumsy trick won't work. Tell me your real intentions." Ruth Bader, trembling, stepped back and begged, "Demon Queen, I was wrong." Elizabeth turned her back to Ruth and said coldly, "I'm not taking you seriously at all. Do you think I see you as a threat?" She paused and added with a sharp tone, "Don't flatter yourself." Ruth Bader sighed in relief, but clenched her fists in frustration, hiding her resentment. Outside the house, Wang Chai was busy repairing himself after being beaten by Elizabeth, grumbling under his breath about the unfairness of it all. Later that evening, Leping called everyone to the table for dinner. Ruth Bader, after finishing her meal, quietly advanced to 3-star Demon King level. Her body began to radiate pure energy. Noticing her glowing aura, Leping asked with concern, "Miss Ruth, would you like another plate of braised pork rice?" However, Ruth Bader's nose started bleeding from the surge of power within her. She quickly waved her hand and said, That's enough for me," thinking to herself, "So this magical food is called braised pork rice. After experiencing its saltiness, sweetness, and fragrance, I broke through again. This is incredible, but my body can't handle any more." As Ruth declined, Leping turned to Elizabeth and offered, "Elizabeth, eat some more." He served her another portion. Ruth Bader watched Elizabeth eat and thought, how can they eat such food as if it's a simple home-cooked meal? Could it be that they've surpassed the Demon King level? Are there beings in this world stronger than Demon Kings? No wonder Elizabeth was willing to give up the world to stay with this man. Now I'm more determined than ever to get him. Trying to stir things up, Ruth said to Elizabeth with a sly smile, "Sister Elizabeth has such a good appetite. But aren't you worried that Mr. Leping will dislike you if you eat too much?" Leping immediately replied with a warm smile, "How could that be? I'm happiest when I see her enjoying my food. It's the only thing I've done right." Ruth Bader softly replied, "I'm so envious. I wish I could eat meals made just for me every day." Elizabeth clenched her fists in annoyance and said angrily, "I have no appetite now," thinking to herself, "The only thing done right? Leping, do you mean the only thing I can do well in front of you is eating?" She stood up from the dining table and went to the couch, switching on the TV. Ruth called out, "Sister Elizabeth, aren't you going to eat? The food Mr. Leping cooked is so delicious. Don't you usually praise it?" Elizabeth ignored her and continued watching TV, nibbling on a snack. Turning her attention back to Leping, Ruth said sweetly, "Mr. Leping, you're the best cook I've ever met. Can you teach me? I want to learn from you." Leping, however, paid no attention to her words. His focus was on Elizabeth, thinking, her mood swings are extreme. That's normal during the rules period, right? But for some reason, Seeing her unhappy makes me feel uneasy. Later that evening, Ruth Bader went to take a bath. During her bath, she advanced to 4-star Demon King level. Relaxing in the tub, she thought, drinking water, eating, bathing. These simple things bring me great benefits. It's wonderful. All my life I've followed the strong, hoping to gain something in return. But I've never thought about ruling the world, because with my enchanting power, it seemed impossible. But now, her eyes lit up with determination. I have an idea. I'm sure I can do it. As long as I get this man, I can have the whole world. From now on, I have only one goal, to win Leping's heart. For that purpose, I must give up on my past self. She called out from the bathroom, Mr. Leping, could you bring me some clothes? Surprised, Leping asked, Miss Ruth, did you just call me? Before Leping could grab clothes for her, Ruth walked out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. His towel. Leping, startled, exclaimed, That's my towel! Unfazed, Ruth Bader casually sat between Leping and Elizabeth on the couch. I had no choice, she said innocently. Sister Elizabeth's clothes are too tight and unsuitable for me. She leaned in close to Leping, pressing her chest against his arm. Mr. Leping, are you watching IQIYI? Let me watch it with you. Elizabeth, who was sitting nearby, shot a sharp glare at Ruth but said nothing, quietly eating her snack. Leping, visibly flustered, stood up and said, Let me help you, Miss Ruth. I'll find a proper outfit for you. He quickly left the room, avoiding the awkward situation. Ruth Bader watched him leave and thought to herself, You ran away again. However, she smiled confidently. It doesn't matter. There will be plenty of chances. As long as I keep attacking, you'll eventually be mine. As she plotted her next move, Elizabeth suddenly materialized behind her, her shadowy hand clamping tightly over Ruth's mouth. Furious, Elizabeth stood before her, her eyes cold. Originally, I planned to lie down and ignore a minion like you. Ruth Bader, terrified, tried to mumble an apology, but her mouth was blocked. Elizabeth continued, her voice laced with disdain. However, I've changed my mind. I'm curious about a certain friend. Since you're from the Dark Guild, you must have some information, don't you? Ruth Bader's body trembled as Elizabeth tightened her shadowy grip. Sensing Ruth's fear, Elizabeth leaned in closer and said, Don't worry. I don't intend to kill you. As long as you cooperate, this will all be over soon. Ruth Bader's mind raced in panic. To win Leping, I can't admit defeat now. Even if it's the Demon Queen, I won't give in. Let me show you the power of a 4-star Demon King. With a surge of energy, she activated her Fatal Attraction skill, intending to trap Elizabeth in an illusion. But the moment she cast the spell, Ruth found herself imprisoned, surrounded by various tools of torture. Confused, she thought, what's going on? This is my illusion. The sound of a heavy door creaking open interrupted her thoughts. She turned toward the noise and saw Elizabeth, dressed as a prison guard, holding a whip in her hand. Panic filled Ruth's eyes. What's going on? You should have fallen into my illusion, she demanded. Elizabeth smirked. That's right. I did fall into your trap, on purpose, but I also dragged you into it at the same time. Ruth clenched her teeth in frustration and snapped, What do you want? Mr. Leping will return soon. Aren't you afraid he'll see what you've done to me? Elizabeth's smile widened. I've made some adjustments to your primitive illusion. 1 hour here is now equivalent to 10 seconds outside. When the illusion ends, you'll forget everything that happened here, and it won't affect you in the real world. Ruth Bader, regaining some composure, sneered at Elizabeth. You're doing all of this to threaten me into leaving Mr. Leping alone, right? Well, let me tell you directly. There's no way I'm backing down. Her confidence surged as she thought, with all these small favors, I've already advanced to 4-star Demon King. If I stay with Mr. Leping longer, my future will be limitless. Compared to that, your threats mean nothing. Even if you kill me, Mr. Leping will find a way to bring me back. Before Ruth could say another word, Elizabeth's whip cracked sharply through the air, striking her. Ruth Bader cried out in pain as Elizabeth mercilessly struck her with the whip. You're overthinking things, Elizabeth said coldly. I want Amelia's whereabouts. She struck Ruth again and continued. The Dark Guild wasn't completely destroyed, and there's no news about Amelia. Someone like you, who managed to reach Demon King level. Could it be that you captured her? Ruth, trembling and sobbing, begged. I really don't know. Elizabeth chuckled, clearly relishing Ruth's suffering. If you want to resist so much, then go on. Let's see how long you last. She kept striking Ruth, enjoying the moment. After some time, Elizabeth paused and repeated her question. Where is Amelia? Half conscious, Ruth stammered. I really don't know. Please, Demon Queen, let me go. Elizabeth watched her carefully, pondering. Could it be she truly doesn't know? Where did Amelia go? But even as doubt crept into her mind, Elizabeth smirked. Whatever. Even if I didn't get anything out of her for some reason, I feel strangely satisfied, like I've gotten revenge. Her thoughts wandered, and her expression softened as she considered. Could it be because I'm jealous? Jealous? Over Leping? Just as Elizabeth was lost in her musings, Leping walked into the room holding a set of clothes. Elizabeth, what are you doing? He asked curiously. Then, showing off his new outfit, he added, what do you think of this look? Elizabeth turned and froze. Seeing Leping in his sharp and handsome attire, her face flushed a deep red. The illusion she had crafted around Ruth instantly shattered. Leping, oblivious, glanced at the shirt he was holding. Is this big enough for Miss Ruth? Elizabeth, overwhelmed by embarrassment, quickly turned away and retreated to her room, slamming the door shut behind her. Leping stood there, confused. What's going on with her? He muttered. Meanwhile, Ruth Bader, having endured severe torment in the illusion, was on the brink of a mental breakdown. She knelt before Elizabeth, her entire body trembling as she begged, Please, Demon Queen, I won't dare to do this again. Please, let me go. The towel she was wearing began to slip away, leaving her exposed. Leping, entering the room at that moment, was stunned. Miss Ruth, he stammered, quickly averting his gaze. Reacting instinctively, he grabbed a nearby cloth and draped it over her, covering her modesty. Later that night, Ruth Bader lay trembling in her bed. Although she couldn't remember exactly what had happened, an overwhelming sense of fear lingered. What happened? She wondered. Why does this fear haunt me? She tried to refocus her thoughts. I've reached 4-star Demon King level. If I go outside, I'd be on par with the Dark Guild and the Sword Saint Guild. So why do these people make me feel like an ant being toyed with by a child, utterly powerless? Determined, she clenched her fists. No, I can't give up like this. To achieve more, I need to endure. Suddenly, a noise outside the window startled her. She turned her head and froze. A shadow loomed, staring back at her. It was Elizabeth. Elizabeth met Ruth's gaze, her expression calm but menacing. Without speaking, she gestured. I'm watching you. Terrified, Ruth quickly ducked under her blanket, her entire body shaking. Elizabeth smiled to herself and thought, Stupid Leping, you still remember your promise? No one else is allowed to sleep in your bed. You brought this woman here just to provoke me into showing my feelings, didn't you? Humph. Even if you're the creator, you can't control emotions. Once this woman is gone tomorrow, I'll slowly deal with you. Her smile widened as she considered her next move. It looks like I still have a chance of defeating you again. The next morning, Leping woke up feeling refreshed and headed toward the washroom. On the way, he was surprised to see Ruth Bader doing housework. Miss Ruth, you don't have to be so polite, he said. We have a robot vacuum cleaner for that. Hurry and sit down. You're our guest. Turning to Elizabeth, he asked, Elizabeth, why didn't you stop her? Elizabeth shot him an annoyed glare. I didn't force her to do it. What does it have to do with me? Ruth quickly interjected. Sister Elizabeth didn't tell me to. Made the floor so dirty yesterday, so I thought I should clean it up. In her mind, however, she thought, It's because of you, Demon Queen. You've been sitting there watching me since early morning, making me so uneasy I had to do something to prove myself. Leping sighed and said gently, Miss Ruth, get up. Don't worry about such small things. Ruth looked at him gratefully. Thank you, Mr. Leping, for being so kind. Leping smiled. No need to be so polite. I'll make you breakfast after I wash up. From behind, Elizabeth's expression darkened as she clenched her fists. Standing abruptly, she pushed Ruth aside and marched toward Leping. It's just mopping the floor. Do you have to be so distressed about it? Give me the mop. I'll do it myself. Leping held the mop firmly, No way, he stammered. Elizabeth glared at him, her patience thinning. Why not? Leping met her gaze seriously. The rules say so. Let go quickly. Elizabeth's eyes flickered with hesitation before she reluctantly released her grip. Fine, she muttered. Leping exhaled in relief and addressed them both. I'm going to wash up now. Please wait for me. As he walked away, he thought to himself, you think I didn't notice, Elizabeth? You poured out the red dates and wolfberry tea I brewed for you this morning. That must mean the rules aren't over yet. Do you have a stomachache? Mopping the floor is probably just impulsive behavior caused by discomfort. How could I let you harm yourself with cold water? After Leping left, Ruth glanced at Elizabeth and said hesitantly, Mr. Leping thinks the same. Sister Elizabeth, you can't be so mean. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed dangerously. Remember this. You're leaving today. This is my last mercy. Say another word of nonsense, and I'll annihilate you where you stand. Ruth's entire body went cold as the oppressive aura weighed down on her. She quickly apologized, stammering, I'll be leaving soon. This horrible feeling of oppression, Ruth thought. It's suffocating. Mr. Leping truly is a treasure, but this evil dragon guarding him is someone I will never be able to defeat. It's better to quit while I still can. Sometime later, Leping, fresh from his bath, fried some eggs and cooked a pot of noodles. Setting the table, he announced, Today's breakfast is egg noodles. Ruth Bader hesitated before eating, glancing nervously at Elizabeth. Sister Elizabeth, may I? Elizabeth shot her an irritated look. Eat quickly so you can get on the road. Scared, Ruth began eating, thinking to herself, this dish won't help me much at 4-star Demon King level. What a pity. This is the last gift from the hero. Leping, noticing her melancholic expression, asked gently, Miss Ruth, are you leaving soon? Before Ruth could reply, Elizabeth interjected coldly, After finishing her bowl of noodles, I'll use teleportation magic to send her away. What? Leping? Can't stand it? Leping gave a nervous smile. Elizabeth? You're such a joker. I just thought, should we contact Uncle Boss and Miss Chi-Chi for help? After all, Miss Ruth is avoiding the Dark Guild's pursuit. Hearing these names, Ruth's eyes widened with interest. Uncle Boss, as in the boss of the Card Guild? And Miss Chi-Chi? Could that be... Before she could finish, Elizabeth interrupted, Just eat quickly. I've already decided where you're going. Ruth nodded reluctantly, resuming her meal. Damn it, she thought. She's completely blocked my way of staying here. If I leave now, I'll focus on building my own power. But, according to Mr. Leping's mention of the Card Guild and the disappearance of the Wordmaster, it seems this place holds significant connections I didn't realize. Leping, sensing the tension, smiled. You two can discuss it later. For now, enjoy your breakfast. Ruth, treating the meal as her last, savored every bite with an exaggerated enthusiasm. Elizabeth, visibly annoyed, snapped, So noisy. Do you have to smack your lips while eating? Suddenly, Leping noticed something odd and asked, Elizabeth, why are you adding so much vinegar to your food? Elizabeth, caught off guard, blushed and stammered, What are you talking about? There's no such thing. Leping tilted his head. But if you add so much vinegar, won't it be too sour? Elizabeth glanced at the vinegar bottle and realized she had indeed poured too much. However, refusing to back down, she said stubbornly, I like it this way. Don't worry about me. As she took a bite, Leping leaned forward with curiosity. How is it? Is it good? Elizabeth's entire body trembled as the intense sourness overwhelmed her. Her expression shifted, but she forced a smile and replied, Really good. In reality, the overwhelming acetic flavor was wreaking havoc on her taste buds. Her tongue felt like it was burning, the sourness rising uncontrollably. As she swallowed, memories of her time with Leping began to flood her mind. Have we really been through so much already? She thought. From being fated enemies, to a belated encounter, to becoming allies, to investigating the world together, to playing games, and even ruling the world in turns. The memories became more vivid. From unintentional guidance to closer contact, everything seemed to move toward this direction. But now, tears welled up in her eyes as a bitter realization hit her. Recently, I discovered you're the creator, someone I can never catch up to. In your eyes, I'm no different from anyone else. Your kindness towards me feels so genuine. She gripped her chopsticks tightly, her body trembling. Do I hold a special place in your heart? Or is it all just my wishful thinking? Her emotions boiled over. She slammed her chopsticks down and shouted, "Stupid Leping, have you ever liked me?"